Good evening. We're back with script notes. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time it is, but we're back with script notes. It's been a long time. It's been, how long's it been? A few months at the very least. But we are back. Um, we can call it season two, I guess. We've had season one. We had a lot of exciting things happening in season one, but now it's season two, which means that this is, I guess, our season opener. So, we're going to make sure that we have the same level of content as we had last season, which was about a year. Hopefully, we'll be able to keep doing this one for a bit longer. But yeah, we're going to be here talking to a whole bunch of people about a whole bunch of scripts and maybe a few other things as they come into us on a case by case basis. But we're kicking things off today with one that we've been trying to get done for a few months now, but things just haven't worked out when we've tried to. But things have worked out today. And of course, this wouldn't be a script notes if I weren't joined by my absolute favorite enemy. Hi, Navian.
Honk.
It's been a while since we've done one of these. Have you encountered any wonderful scripts in the wild that you've seen? We've had a lot of new characters, of course.
Uh, Probably. That doesn't mean I remember them well enough to name them. Sorry.
That makes sense. But what we are going to be doing, of course, is talking about one script at a time. And the script that we're going to be talking about today is Rochambeau with our very special guest, Habby Demeda. How you doing?
I am lovely, Alejo. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's good to be back here doing this and having you with us to talk. I don't know if you two know
It
each
has
other.
been a long time coming.
I don't know if you two know each other.
No, I've
No,
never seen this dude in my life.
no. I think Navian actually may be awful as a person. I'm not sure.
That's true.
Yeah,
I think you have actually played together on one of
once or
my
twice.
streams once.
A great goose, awful human.
Uh, I think that's true, Alejo. I think we did actually play one game on your server where we were both actually in the game.
Yeah, I think so.
Did we?
Uh,
I
I
think
think
so.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, back when was it? I think it would have been with Jams as my co-storyteller. It would have been fairly early, I think.
Yeah, it would have been pretty. It was a while ago.
Hmm. Anyway, yeah, we've got the trifecta that we've been looking at of mint, goose, and tomato, which I think sounds like a lovely Christmas dinner.
It sounds like something, all right.
It definitely sounds like there's a meal in there.
You're talking to one person who doesn't like mint and another person who doesn't like tomatoes.
Wait,
I
aren't they
didn't
the
know
same
that.
person?
No, it's you who doesn't like tomatoes.
No, no, I don't. I don't. We're not going to get into this. But
No, we
I don't like
we
the
are fully going to
texture.
get into this.
I don't like the texture of raw tomato.
Oh, I agree
Well,
with
there
that.
you go.
I agree with that. But like, if you can make like tomato sauce or something, right?
Oh yeah, anything tomato based is probably very good. I just don't like the actual texture. I'm not gonna bite into a tomato like it's an apple.
No, you should slice it first.
I'm not gonna do that either.
How do you feel about sun-dried tomatoes? Because I feel like that's the one that you want with goose and a mint sauce.
Yeah, I could dig that. Yeah, the sun dried tomato is actually a pretty popular pizza topping here in the U.S.
Is it?
I
I
think
think.
sun-dried tomatoes are my least favorite type of tomato, probably.
Besides me,
Uh, yeah, clearly.
yeah.
Uh, I think. I don't know. I think I'm with Habby on this one. Tomatoes aren't my favorite fruit in general. Yeah,
For
chat
a
are
long time, they weren't even considered to be fruit here in the U.S. Like it's like one of those things that like when you discover that like spoiler alert for many of the kids listening, but like that the Easter Bunny's not real. Like when you learn that is the same time that you actually learn that tomatoes are actually not vegetables because when we were kids they were pitched to us as vegetables, which they're clearly not.
I mean, they are. Tomatoes are both fruit and vegetable, like peppers.
Yeah, they're botanically fruit, but culinarily vegetables.
Yeah.
Okay, but they're not. They're fruit.
I mean, yeah, they are fruit. They are also
That's it.
vegetable.
Nope, don't believe it.
Chat are enjoying the side quest that we've gone on already super early on in this second series. You'll get a lot of
Oh,
that.
get ready. There will be more.
I can't remember what the weirdest. Oh no, that this is a diversion about diversions, but I don't remember what the weirdest diversion we've been on an episode of Script Notes, but we've definitely had some weird ones.
Well, let's
Uh,
not get into it.
if you remember, chat, let us know. I'm sure that you've all seen, some of you will have seen our older episodes. But yeah, we're here to talk about Blood on the Clock Tower. You might have heard of it. It's a board game. Um, so yeah, uh, we've got Tomato. We've got Head back in game. Yes, correct gear. Let's go. Tomato, you are of course probably best known as one of the two hosts of the Friday night um, Connecticut Blood on the Clock Tower stream. I'm forgetting for the moment who your co-host is. But yeah, do you want to let's go back a little bit further before that. Do you want to tell us about how you found Blood on the Clock Tower in the first place?
Well, I mean, I had played, similar games. Werewolf and the Resistance and Secret Hitler to some extent. Like these are games I had played before, so I was familiar with the idea of social deduction games, social deception games. And they were like one of those things that you'd play with people at a party, or you'd play with my friends from college or whatever. It was fun, but it was always just like okay, but there's also other games to play. Um, and I've always been a big fan of board games, and so one of the things that I do as a person who commutes quite a lot is I listen to a lot of podcasts. And one of the podcasts that I first listened to was the Shut Up and Sit Down podcast, and they were at some kind of a festival or something like that in about 2018, and they mentioned, "Hey, there's this game, and the game is all about it's social deception, like Werewolf is, but there's the ability for the storyteller or the moderator. They didn't even call him a storyteller on the thing, for them to uh, to balance the game using misinformation by like someone being drunk but not knowing that they're drunk." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool." Um, and then 2019, John Jengset and a couple of other people who were official storytellers back then were at PAX East up here in the Northeast in Boston. And my wife and I went, and one of the things that we did at PAX East was, my wife went to go do something else. And I was like, "I want to try this game." She was like, "Okay." So I went there and tried it out, and I played my first game of Trouble Brewing, and I was the butler, and I committed a rules error that I thought was going to ruin the game, but it turned out that John, being the excellent storyteller that he is, just went along with it, and my rules mistake ended up getting me executed because I voted when I was not allowed to vote, and everybody was like, "You're not the butler. Let's kill you," and we ended up losing. But um, that kind of hooked me on the product, and then COVID came around, and oh, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. Throughout 2019, early 2020, I met some people here in Connecticut, including Connecticut server founder Harrison. Love you, Harrison, if you're listening. And we played a bunch of games here in town. I made an unofficial Grim, just a bootlegged little thing off of stuff that Ben Finney had put up on the internet. Printed some stuff out, started playing here in the area, and it was going really well. We were building up a pretty nice little community of people who wanted to play the game. And then COVID hit, and whatever. And then, I mean, from there, it was pre Brain Tool, so not pre app, pre Brain Tool. And we played a couple games online through Tabletop Simulator, which I don't recommend. I mean, let me rephrase. I do not recommend from what it was like 3 years ago. Then again, I probably can't imagine it's gotten much better. And then when I found out about the Brain Tool, I was like, "Hey, let's start hosting games here on Harrison's Connecticut server on Discord." And it just kind of went from there, starting in, I think it was like probably right around the time, like 2021. So it was about a year of, of pandemic, disaster. And then around 2021, we just started playing online, and I was like, "Hey, we can start like streaming these." And everybody was like, "Yeah, that's cool. Let's try that." And I think somewhere in like March or April of 2021, we started streaming Clock Tower, and it's been a crazy adventure ever since. Ever since.
Yeah, my first game was in January of 2021, which feels like forever ago now, but
I know, seriously.
that would have been a couple of months after the brain tool came into being.
Hmm.
So I never got to experience the joys of I know that what is it? Roll20 was another one that people would
Roll 20,
play
yep.
on. Sometimes people would play it in Excel. We have we often have people who are like been around for a while on script notes, so we've heard all of the stories. But Tabletop Simulator, I think, is a new one. I've seen the mod.
It's not great. It's
I've
not
also
great.
seen the mod.
But yeah, I've never played it. Maybe we should do that
Nope.
as a special one time.
I will not be here for that.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, no. If you're the person who made that mod, then that is a hell of a lot better than I could do. I'll put it that way. But you know, Brain is a genius.
Yeah, I think Stefan has done a significant amount of work to. Uh, I think the to create a bigger footprint for this game, starting with the tool and then eventually when designing the app. I think that the original plan for Clock Tower, obviously, so some of you probably know, was for it to not be digital, and everybody wanted to play it in person. It was not meant to be a game played at a distance. It's meant to be played in person. That was the original motto and creed of TPI. But just like with anything else, especially in the middle of a global disaster, you have to adapt a little bit. And I think that, embracing the brain tool, embracing Stefan and his ability to create the tool and create the app was probably one of the better decisions that they've made, because it's allowed people from all over the place to be able to experience this game even if they don't have a local community. And it's also reached a lot of people that um, don't necessarily want to play in person, and I think that that opens up the option for this game and creates better accessibility for it, which is honestly probably the one of the best things you could possibly do for any game.
Yeah, we've said this a few times, but Clock Tower has the advantage of being a hugely accessible game in a lot of ways, with a lot of credit to that going to the likes of Head, I think, is one person in particular who's
Mm-hmm. Yep.
done a lot for that. Um, but yeah, you want to see a VOD of the tabletop one. I don't know that any exists, but there is, if you go back far enough, a VOD of Roll20 on the TPI YouTube channel. If you go back far enough, I think there's exactly one.
Yikes.
I know.
Yikes.
Is there one? I feel like there's a couple, but yeah, there's at least one of the Roll20 way back. Back when
Yeah.
they like first started live streaming, I guess.
Yeah. I think my background is not too dissimilar to yours, Habby, although the like direct path into Clock Tower, of course, is a lot more similar to yours, Navian.
Right.
Um, so yeah, you said that you started off at a convention with some Trouble Brewing as the butler. Did you play
Mhm.
any more games that weekend?
That was the only game I got to play that weekend. And funnily enough, I think that that was the and I do not recommend this as a path for prospective players of this game. That was the only game I played before I started storytelling, and that was merely by want of the fact that there was no one else to storytell. So I had to pick it up because really nobody else could. So in the long run, however, I would and again, this was literally just an issue of numbers and the fact that the game was not released, not well known at all, not really publicized at all, and everything had to be done kind of, roughshod from hand.
We're back. We're live again. Sorry about that. Gremlins. I don't know. My internet connection's been a little bit wonky recently. Um, we're all good. Sorry. Could you repeat everything that you said since? What was the last thing that you heard, chat? Something about. I don't know. I asked you a question, but I don't know if the question got through.
So the my I got to play exactly one game
Okay.
of Clock Tower at the con
Right.
before I took up the mantle of storytelling simply by virtue of the fact that we had to. So your question to follow up was, did I play any games of BMR or S&V before I story told them? And the answer is no. I story told those scripts before I got a chance to play in them, and
How
I
did you
saw exact.
how did you
Oh,
find
go
that?
ahead. Challenging. um, we I did so all of my in-person games before lockdown were Trouble Brewing, because the people that I was playing with in person were just not at the state where we could do more advanced scripts. I only started doing S&V and BMR on stream um, in 2021. So I think the first couple games we streamed were all Trouble Brewing, and then we eased our way into BMR, eased our way into S&V, and then started taking on custom scripts from there. But yeah, it was challenging because you also have to remember there was no content back then. Like my walkthroughs of S&V and BMR were the videos that were on the official TPI YouTube, which were those in-person playthroughs that they filmed. Um, there was one of each script played at that point. So I had exactly one reference video to go by as to how those scripts are supposed to be run. It was challenging. I'll put it that way.
What else did you have? Did you have proto almanacs? Did you have anything from, like you mentioned, Ben Finney had a lot of that at the time?
Yeah, so there was a document floating around that was the Almanac, as it were, um, which I'm sure I still have somewhere, and it still has all the rules about not mentioning the fact that the Fangu can only jump once per game, or that the Goon flipped multiple times per night, and all of
Oh,
these
you had
other.
old BMR.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah.
I've been meaning to run
Um,
old BMR since forever.
Oh
uh,
God.
I may still have the document kicking around, so if I do, I can definitely send it to you.
Yeah, I know all the fun changes that we've had, like Sailor. Each
Mhm.
night choose whether you or another player is drunk.
Yep.
Um, there are some good ones in there. Maybe one day on a Sunday we'll do it. Um, but yeah. Uh, so how exactly did you go about that then? Did you end up making a lot of mistakes when you were new to scripts that you'd seen like once?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that that's expected. Like you're not going to get it right. I mean, hell, first couple of games of Trouble Brewing that I run in person, I mean, I had all the similar follies. The Slayer killed the demon, and I ended the game before the Scarlet Woman could catch it. These things happen.
a
It's a
classic.
learning experience. There's bumps in the road.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. So that's your path through the base scripts. And at
Mhm.
this point, we always like to ask our guests one question, and yes, we're keeping this up for the series too. Which is the best base script, Abby?
The best base script is Trouble Brewing. It is not my favorite, but it is the best one. Um, it is the most play tested. It is the most played. It has the most data on it, and therefore it is the most balanced. It has the most fail safes. It has the most. It has the best introduction to the game and provides of the widest group of players possible with the Blood on the Clock Tower experience as intended. Um, Now that being said, I do find that in other times that I'm more in the mood to play a BMR or an SNV. But I think that when you talk about objectively what is best, because I've seen this I've seen this question asked before. Um, I don't think it's a contest. I really think that you cannot take the award away from Trouble Brewing at that point.
I can't believe you would slander Clock Tower as intended Poison Edition because that's clearly the script that is about how Clock Tower is played as intended.
That is the
Yes, the
best
one
base
that has
script. It's true.
every instance of poisoning and drunkening possible in it.
And a mathematician to cry.
Yes.
Everyone's
Shout.
first created script.
Yep.
How many scripts had you been through before you created that one, Navian?
I have no idea.
um, yeah. But that's a good segue. Let's talk about some custom scripts. Abby, do you remember? really finding any and being like, oh, these are fun new roles that aren't on the base three that I've seen so far. Because obviously we fairly early on got the DPD characters and the Luff
Yep.
characters. I don't know if you were around when we got those or if they were before you.
Oh, when they got released, I was here for it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I don't know how you felt about seeing the first non-base characters then.
I was very I was very invested to begin with on how.
especially in Leviathan.
Yes, we'll get to that in a second.
We definitely
I
will.
was I was very invested in trying to kind of Pokemon gotta catch 'em all understand of what all the characters that were known were at that time, and I definitely think that when like the DPD character, like when DPD got released, I was like, or leaked, I should say. Um, I remember not liking a lot of the characters on it. I remember not really vibing with a lot of them, and just having a shit ton of questions about Lil Monster. But
I mean,
I was not really vibing with them as much.
both of those remain
I
correct takes, but go on.
hey, listen. I mean, another little. I mean, I know you've probably heard this story before, but old days where Lil Monster was being spoiled, as it were, back in 2019, was that the token was the demon, and if at any point the player lost control of the token, the demon died and the game was over. So there was a whole bunch of stories of people, like the token was given to a good player and the good player like literally threw it across the room to end the game and stuff like that. Like I don't really think we've come much further from that in terms of understanding this character. And I know that I've set the write up back about another 3 months just by talking about this, but it really is. I mean, just kind of as an aside, yeah, I think that it's a wild character, and I was intrigued by it, but I wasn't exactly thrilled about it. Um, Unlike when you start seeing characters like, you know, Amnesiac or Leviathan or Widow or Goblin, the Luff characters, as or the proto Luff characters. I know Amnesiac is not actually on Luff, but it was at one point.
It is.
It is.
It is, yeah.
What's the one I'm thinking of?
I've no idea.
I know there was a character that was replaced on it, but either way.
The Lost Townsfolk are Amnesiac, Widow's a minion, Amnesiac Savant, Fisherman, Artist, uh,
Cannibal.
Cannibal, one
Oh, it
more.
was Atheist. That's right. Atheist was
Ah,
originally
okay.
on
Was it? I didn't know that.
that. Hmm.
You learn something new every day. Yeah, we didn't get Atheist, of course, until it was actually released. Although
Yeah.
looking at this script that we're about to talk about at some point, I'm not actually seeing that many DPD characters. I don't know if there are any on here.
Widow was on. So Widow was from. Oh, you're saying
Widow is
DPD,
Luff.
not Luff.
DPD specifically, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, and
Oh,
I
Bounty
think I
Hunter.
wasn't. Oh, that's right. Bounty Hunters on this script. That's right. Yeah, you can
It,
tell I've looked at this recently.
we've all done our preparation for this stream, yeah.
Mm. Yep.
Um,
Oh, and Preacher, my favorite.
so what other scripts in the early days of custom scripts did you enjoy?
There weren't a lot out there. Um, I know catfishing was floating around. We played a lot. What ended up happening was that a lot of our players were building scripts back in the day with questionable character interactions and uh, titles as well. But we've had, I know one we played, and I'm responsible for uploading this onto Jeff's website, so I'm very sorry. But one of the ones that we played was a horrible script, and I mean that in a loving way, written by the famous Jack Broom. That,
Oh no.
yeah, I mean that should just kind of start you off to begin with. One horse-sized duck or 50 duck-sized horses, which again, the name itself should curse it just to begin with. But it
No,
was
but
a
that's why
little
you play it because it's got such a good name.
it was a Lil Monster or Legion script, um, and just had all different sorts of characters that were, um,
I've brought it up.
yeah, it's a
It's a
script.
script. It is
It's a
objectively a
script.
script. I put it in chat for anybody who wants to see it.
But yes,
Uh,
it is a script that we used to play a lot on Connecticut back in the early days, and I think it was just because people really. There is something magical when you first introduce Legion to a group of players. It's just it's one of those things that you can't get back. You know, that first initiation of paranoia.
yeah,
And I think that carried us for a good amount of time in the early days.
yeah. I remember the Legion reveal stream when it was basically the first of all of the wave of release characters that Ben didn't put in play.
Correct. Yep.
Uh,
Setting a trend.
oh my God, Snake Charmer Legion. Anyway,
What's wrong with Snake Charmer Legion? Jack believes
absolutely,
that's a great interaction.
absolutely. Of course, Jack believes that's a great interaction.
Yeah.
Um, how about you then? How was your early forays into script building?
Not good. Um, I did something very similar to what you've alluded to that everyone does, which is write a script that's full of not droisening in this case, but character and and character and alignment changing.
Ah, the other one.
Okay, to be fair, the script that I wrote was purposefully bad.
Yes, I
Yeah,
understand that, Navian. I know that. I'm saying what we were talking about before was the idea that everyone, when first writing a script, writes something that has no discipline to it, and writes something that is just bonkers and is completely unsolvable in most cases.
Mega Parsec 256 is right actually. My uh, house rule for Snake Charmer actually doesn't make it terrible to have Snake Charmer Legion. We'll have to check that
Oh,
out
I,
sometimes. It's still not good.
oh, I just run it as intended, which is not running it.
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But
so
yeah, I think that I've written a lot of scripts, and I know I have a bit of a reputation, one might say, for writing. I think the word jank is a little strong. Memes a little strong. I think Emma said it nicely when referring to one of my scripts as more of an art piece than an actual script, and I think that that's a fair way of putting it. I think that because like okay, part of the appeal of this game is I mean, literally the sole appeal of this game is the fact that you have these interactions of characters and abilities. That's literally what sets it apart from a werewolf or whatever. And because of that, there are rules there, and rules create interactions between abilities. And part of the beauty of this game is that you can find extremely bizarre interactions that were never intended to happen in the first place. But what it does is it allows for unique experiences. And I think that one of the seminal goals for me as a storyteller is to make it so that whenever I do storytell a game, it is a unique experience, a unique event, a memory that the players can walk away from. And I think that part of the fun of this game is that you can do basically anything. And because of that, when you get the opportunity to write a script, sometimes you're going to write one that's going to be a little bit weird. And I think that that's fine. I mean, I think that it exists merely to show off that there are bizarre things that can be achieved in this game. And I think that it can create fun experiences for the players. And it's not just me writing it because I can, which I know it probably seems like, but I actually do want to have players interact with it and kind of experience a very different sort of direction every time they look at it.
So which is your favorite of your most artistic pieces of work then, Abby?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So you and I have run the Forbidden script
We
here on
have.
stream.
Because Navian wasn't available for 1 week, so we were both like, let's
Correct.
do it.
It was our one opportunity.
Yeah.
The Forbidden script, ergo, or known as such because it was forbidden to be played on stream. Um, I I know that a lot of people would probably expect the Stormcatcher Favors of the Damsel to be my favorite of the Habby series, the Habby Criterion collection, as it were. Um, but I think I actually really like kind of going back to what we were talking about before. about how ruinous and game breaking Little Monster is. I wrote a Teensyville called Haberdash Boulder Dash, which I'm not allowed to stream after, what is it, Navian? 1 a.m.?
Something like that. This is per
Or not
your
after
own
midnight?
request. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a Little Monster solo Teensyville script. And the reason why it's so bizarre is because there are a lot of interactions when it comes to the lunatic and the Little Monster, in the fact that if there is no other demon on the script, what does the lunatic see? What token do they get? What are they told as information? It's a very
Brain
it's
melting script.
yes, it is a brain melting script. But again, this is what was given to us by ye old lords TPI as their vision for this game. So I'm going to play within that sandbox and I'm going to find weird shit like this to be able to do.
Fuck around and find out.
Exactly.
So, which is your
Maybe
favorite
maybe that's
Habby?
like your philosophy of script building is fuck around and find out.
To a certain extent, yeah. But and again, most of them are end up a little cursed. Not gonna lie, they end up a little cursed. But I do think that might actually be my favorite of the scripts that I've written. I think that if I had to choose like an objectively best or most fun script that I've written, it's probably Rochambeau, just because it actually. This is gonna sound weird. Um, it can actually be played as opposed to some of the other scripts that I've written. And I think that there's a much wider variety of game experiences that can be found in Rochambeau, and I think that's the one that I've probably spent the most time on as well, trying to refine it. Of course, that being said, the version that we have here, the most recent version, was from the Clock Tower Con. Or no, this is from World Cup, and that was the last time that I worked on it.
Made it
So
to the
that
round of
was
32.
I made it to the round of 32. I lost to Avery's script, and it was totally deserved. I believe that it was. What was that, like January?
Something like.
I don't. It's something like that. It's been a very long time, so this script is in need of a makeover, so to speak.
What's your favorite piece of Habby artwork, Navian?
Oh, I already know the answer to this.
Do you? What is it?
It's the Fangurki.
Yeah. Well, to be
Yeah,
fair, that is something that we made together. But you made the Fengurki icon.
I did. Yes. Um, I do all of the thumbnail stuff for the Connecticut Blood on the Clock Tower YouTube page. I do most of the assets for the Blood on the Clock Tower stream on Twitch, and a lot of script images as well. Um, I really like the one that I made for When the Levee Breaks. I think I'm pretty fond of the effect that I did on that. But yeah, when you take a MS Paint clip art turkey and slap a Fangu on it and turn it into a Fangurki, how do you top that? It's
You
just so
can't.
cursed.
So in my stream yesterday, I found another fantastic interaction that I think that you'll both really enjoy.
Hmm.
Um, Flower Girl,
Yeah.
Organ Grinder, Vortox.
Hmm.
The demon votes 3 times. What can the Flower Girl learn?
The demon votes 3 times. And there's a organ grinder in play. I mean, theoretically, the organ grinder is in play, so the flower girl can learn anything.
Except
They
for
can learn
3.
yes or no.
No, there's a jinx between Flower Girl and Organ Grinder
Oh,
that
that's
the
right.
yeah
They
yeah
learn
the
how many
Flower Girl
times?
yeah. So what can the Flower Girl learn?
0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 or greater.
What do you think, Navian?
So okay, the premise is a vortex is in play,
Yep,
and I would say they could learn anything but a 3.
they must learn a 3 because the information
Why?
is coming from a fabled, not a townsfolk.
I do not view the Jinn that way.
Oh, so to that end, to that end,
Okay.
um, we had. So this is the reason. This is This debate, okay, this debate goes back a very long time, okay, and there is still no clear-cut answer on this. I've spoken to Ed at length about this. I've talked to Jack Broom. I've talked to John Jengset. I've talked to, I think I even talked to Evan Donahue about this, and I was just basically asking, as a general catch-all bit of information, or a bit of rules foundation, do fabled abilities interact with resident abilities? And it's a much bigger question than I think a lot of people realize. Um, the there is, and again, this is all going to come down to, well, you're the storyteller, you decide how you want to do it. There may not be an intended answer, and in fact, that is the answer I've gotten from most. Sorry, that's the cop out that I've gotten from most fabled and official storytellers that I've spoken to.
It's definitely what
Um,
Steve would tell you.
yeah,
I don't think it's a cop out, and I also don't think Jin works that way. But sure.
The
Yeah.
general idea being is that if a jinx is in play, does the jinx so the beautiful one that I have from, and you'll appreciate this, Alejo. So
Okay.
um this is from, I want to make sure I get my writing on this correct. Um Bear with me. This is great television.
It's fine. Yeah. The most important thing with well, you've defined that. The most important thing with questions like this, of course, is how you run it as a storyteller. The As long as you're honest with your players when you answer the question, that is the correct answer.
So the historic example always was the in Race to the Bottom. You know, does a doomsayer is a doomsayer affected by the misregistration of a spy or a recluse, which is
Hmm.
literally the foundation of that entire script. I mean, that's literally what the entire script is about.
Yeah.
Um, that's a classic interaction of, does a fabled interact with um, does a fabled interact with the townsfolk abilities. However, the one that I have, which is on the script that Navian has not let me play, the unspeakable script,
Which one is
is
this?
regard when the levy breaks, the forbidden
Okay.
script.
The Forbidden. I was just
Uh,
checking it was the same script, not another one that Navian doesn't let you play.
okay, yeah, there's a couple of those, but that is the one. Um, so imagine there is a recluse in play and a sage in play.
Yeah.
Okay, Leviathan is on the script, but it is not in play.
Okay.
Okay, if the sage is executed, can the recluse register as a Leviathan so that the conditions of the Sage and Leviathan jinx are met?
I would say yes, definitely. If
Okay.
if the Recluse can misregister to Doomsayer, there's no reason it can't register to the Jinn, in my opinion. But
Okay.
that is an if. That is an if. And it may well be that if you run um, a data remember, you should theoretically be putting in a homebrew McHomebrew face. But I suppose that is the question, though. But again,
Exactly.
I
ask us.
think that viewing the fabled with like blanket conditions, like whether they can interact with abilities or not, is a very narrow view of fabled and what their role is in the game. And I don't think that it's a particularly good stance to take.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's a slightly different question to the one that I originally raised because that is a question of whether you think that the Jinn provides information or modifies information. And for me, that's also on a case by case basis, actually. But I think in the case of the uh, Flower Girl, because the Flower Girl can't normally learn a number, that number is clearly coming from the Fabled, and Fabled are never subject to. And that's the Vortex that you're looking at there, where the Vortex says townsfolk information rather than Fabled information.
Right.
I very much disagree that that is the intent of it, for one thing, but also I disagree that that is how it necessarily must work. Like
Fair
the
enough.
way that I think of Jin is the Jin is modifying the way the ability works. It's not providing information on its own. It's changing the rule of how this role works, which is also why I think Jin doesn't trigger the mathematician.
See, and
Because if you
I,
change how something works at a base level and then it works the way that it says it should work, if you're looking at this new ruling of it, then nothing has worked abnormally. And therefore, it is still information from the townsfolk ability.
Well, I have a probably yes from Ed on that one.
I don't care. It's just wrong.
Fair enough.
Ed's allowed to be wrong. And again, the
Ed
other
is
thing,
allowed to be wrong.
and
Of
the
course he
important
is.
thing about
He
this is that
regularly is.
no, I wouldn't say.
No.
Like when you view it like that, you're taking again that blanket statement of all fabled need to across the board interact with things like misregistration in the same way, despite the fact that actually there are different like classes of fabled basically that do different things. You know what I mean? Like things like revolutionary or fiddler or Jin are doing different things to the game and they're there for different purposes than you have fabled that actually do provide information, like the Duchess, for example.
Yes.
These things that interact more directly with like the game informational state. I mean, even Doomsayer is made potentially more interesting if you allow misregistration to work for it because it's providing information about alignments within the game itself, kind of like Duchess is, as opposed to things that are meant to be patching holes in things, fixing things. You know, I'm not gonna like misregistration with Sentinel, for example. You can't be like, well, you know, I put in a recluse with this +1 Sentinel, but it's misregistering as a minion, therefore I can put in another +1 Sentinel. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't it doesn't make any sense, right? So I think that it's not great for the game to take this like blanket statement of, well, they're all in the category of fabled and therefore we should treat them all the same way.
Yeah, I would also kind of add on to that and say that specifically, I mean, and again, I know I called it a cop out, but genuinely, scripts are written with express interactions in mind. Take, for example, the Snake Charmer going before demon and minion information, for example. What I call the Alejo rule. If that's how you run things and you write a script, you are going to write a script with the express understanding that that is a rule that is in effect and that is going to influence how that script is written. If I am writing a forbidden script where a recluse can register as a leviathan to satisfy the jinx of the Jinn, as long as my players are aware of that, and as much as they may hate it, that is how I am running things. And then at that point, I'm not really that far off from basically doing a homebrew or something like that. And that's why you have the fabled, like, you know, homebrewy face to be able to facilitate that whole thing. Um, but that's you know that's neither here nor there. I mean, it really is just about making sure that your players are enjoying the experience. And if they're not, then they're not going to play that script, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I do agree that regardless of what way you decide to do things, like with Jin or with Jins that modify how information is gotten from a townsfolk when there's a Vortox in play, or et cetera, uh, make sure that your players just know how you would run it. Make sure that you
Mhm.
know how you would run it, so that if somebody asks halfway through the game, you can give a solid answer instead of having to be like, huh, you know, I didn't think about that, and then end up giving away information about what may or may not be in the game as a result and that kind of stuff. So just know how you'd run it. Make sure you're prepared to answer, even if the role's not in the game, and stick with it.
Or
Yeah.
alternatively, be ready to bluff that you didn't think about something that's already happened.
That's true. You could also do that, but I think that most of the time that's the worst route than just being prepared.
Of course, yeah. But also thank you, Habby, for mentioning Rochambeau and getting us in vaguely back on track. Let's talk about the script that we brought you here to talk about 45 minutes into the stream.
Yeah.
I want to start somewhere maybe slightly different than we usually do. And
Okay.
Danita, this is a question that you get asked quite a lot, including just recently,
I know what it is.
yesterday. Yes,
I know what
the
it is.
question is, why is this script called Rochambeau? And relatedly, why is there not a psychopath on it? I know the answer, but let's let you explain again.
Okay. So let's, you know what, I can answer both of those questions in one answer. Okay. So the genesis of Rochambeau as a script was that it was written with the idea in mind that, much like a game of Rochambeau, or rock, paper, scissors, as some people call it, this script has exactly 3 demons. Not 4, not 1, not 2. It has 3 demons. And those three demons are incredibly different from each other. They are about as different from each other as you can get, or at least as different as you could get back when the script was written. And what that means is that each one of these demons has a very unique strategy behind it, both as the evil team and as the good team. And part of the challenge in Rochambeau is identifying which demon it is, which is not as easy as it looks sometimes, and then being able to know what the best plays are in terms of as a good player or as an evil player. So because of that, we took the rock paper scissors of the game Rochambeau and translated it into three vastly different demons. However, these demons have abilities that, while they can be obfuscated to hide what the actual game is, are not actually necessarily hidden necessarily. Like, to get maximum mileage out of the Poe, you should be triple killing. To get maximum mileage out of the Vig, you should be killing your minions. To get maximum mileage out of the Leviathan, you need to probably make it seem like you're not a Leviathan somehow. These are all very different strategies, but they are very well known. The secret in this script lies in the fact that all of its minions are relatively quiet, or they can be relatively quiet if done properly. Um, One of Evil's biggest advantages on this script is the obfuscation as to which demon is in play, but also the obfuscation as to what minions are in play. Poisoner and Widow seem very superfluous on a lot of scripts, but they actually serve very different functions on this script. And then the other ones also do things that provide power to the evil team in different ways. But what it basically comes down to is that all five of these minions are relatively quiet, but are also going to be making it so it's hard to confirm what the actual minion suite is that's in play. Because of that, despite the thematic companionship that comes with a script called Rochambeau and a minion that has the word Rochambeau in its ability, the psychopath is way, way, way too loud to be on this script. It does too much, too publicly, and in order to play it in a way that is going to be helpful to the evil team with this particular set of demons, you're going to be psychopath killing a lot of players. You're probably not going to wait until Final Four and then psychopath kill somebody. It's not going to happen. So, because of that, psychopath just ends up being way too loud on this script. It doesn't fit the theme of the script, and it doesn't help evil's strategy in any way by being on the script.
All right, so we've got a question in chat that I think maybe just bears a little bit of clarification. Is Leviathan not announced on this script?
So, originally, when the script was conceived, there was some debate as to whether or not what the timing of the Leviathan announcement would be, namely that if a sober and healthy Leviathan was in play, they would be announced at the beginning of every day that there is
Okay.
a sober and healthy
Can I can I
Leviathan in
can I
play.
can I interject here?
Yeah, sure.
I want to clarify that Ed's write up never said that that needed to happen. It always said that it was technically optional. It was just recommended for new players. It was
Yes.
just not quite as clearly written as it is now, but it did always tell you that you did not have to say it every single day. And I don't actually know where that misconception came from.
It is a common misconception, or at least
It
it
is,
was
and I don't
2
know
years
where
ago.
it came
If I
from because
if
it
I
always said that.
if I had to make a guess, I would guess that it came from a storyteller, probably Ben, because he also does it with the pit hag, being like, "This is helpful to clarify," and it is helpful to clarify that, hey, everyone, remember that it's a Leviathan. Remember, you're on day 2, day 3. Kind of in the same way that Ben clarifies, the pit hag has turned you into this thing, and you are still good when he's not required to. Obviously, he doesn't say the
Right.
pit hag has turned you into
Yeah,
this thing.
that
That's
that
where
does
I
make
imagine it
sense.
could have come from.
Yeah, and like it is helpful, and I do recommend it for newer players for sure, people who are just starting out with Leviathan. But yeah, it was never a requirement. But it makes sense that maybe it was a misconception by a storyteller who everybody was sort of following the ruling along with.
Carry on,
So,
Abby.
to answer the question, no, the Leviathan is announced. However, evil has ways of being able to make it so that that's not the case. So, for example, the the poisoner or the widow could choose to poison their demon, regardless of what type it is. And some would even say that a poisoner picking their demon on night one is actually the optimal play for a poisoner on this script, because of the fact that if it, in the case that it is a Leviathan, which they won't know yet, it does hide the announcement and then opens up an additional world for town to consider. Um, that said, the poisoning of Leviathan early on means that you have, in essence, delayed the Leviathan announcement. And the ruling is basically that a a Leviathan who is drunk or poisoned does not gain an announcement. The very first opportunity at dawn that a Leviathan in play is sober and healthy is when the announcement is made. So, for example, if a poisoner was to poison a Leviathan on day one and day two, on day three, the sober and healthy Leviathan will have the first chance of being sober and healthy, and then the storyteller would announce it is day three, there is a Leviathan in play. But that's also the important thing to remember, is that that's also the only time that a Leviathan is announced, is when it has the first opportunity to be announced. If a pit hag decides to change the demon into something else, it is not announced that there is not a Leviathan in play. It just continues on as normal, and town is none the wiser.
So here's a question: has anybody who has played this script, have they poisoned, either as a widow permanently poisoned their Leviathan, or as a poisoner continuously poisoned their Leviathan?
I've seen it happen, I think, twice.
I've seen Habby do it.
Did I do it?
Yeah, there was a game uh, that Navy News Story told. It was right after. Well, it was on. It was a stream game. I don't remember when it was. It would have been about a year and a half ago. But yeah, Navian actually got me to help with the setup for that one. Fun fact.
Oh, I do
Um,
remember that. Yes, yes, I
oh,
do
you did.
remember
You
that.
did know that. Yeah, and you were the widow who poisoned your own Leviathan, and I don't think it went great for you, but
No,
it
it
was
went
a thing.
terrible. Shout outs to our good friend Avery, by the way, who at Clock Tower Con uh, was playing a Leviathan only script for the night release at Clock Tower Con. I was the
Five
Leviathan, and
Nights at
Avery was
Levi's.
the. Was that?
Five Nights at Levi's by Cat.
Five Nights at Levi's by Cat, exactly. And Avery was the widow and decided to pull that play, which got negative mileage because of the fact that there is no other demon on the script.
Very funny.
It did not end well for us.
But it's funny.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that's where that name comes from. I think that we've kind of answered that pretty well, and also the follow-up question that we got. Um, unless there's anything else you want to ask, Navian?
Nope, I just wanted to make sure we got that question out of the way, because that is like the first thing that everybody asks about this script.
Sure
Absolutely.
is.
It kind of feeds into the first question that we usually ask anyway, which is kind of like, what was the idea for it? I imagine that was the idea for it.
Yeah, that was the idea for it.
So why did you pick those three demons specifically? I know you said that they do completely different things, but were there any other demons that you considered, or demons that have come out since then that you could consider replacing?
Shab was considered at one point to be the sneaky demon. So there's a raw power demon, there's a sneaky demon, and there's like kind of middle of the road demon. Or I guess kind of more like a chaos demon, I guess you could say. Poe has pretty much always been the raw power demon. I considered moving to Al Hadikia. It just doesn't work, so we're not going to do that. Um, Leviathan has always been kind of the offbeat left field demon, and I don't really see any way of changing that. I considered maybe like Riot or something like that. It doesn't work. The only one that's like really potentially up there is Vigor Mortis, but I think Vigor Mortis serves two important functions, which is one, outsider manipulation, and two, it provides exactly what you're looking for when it comes to night death ambiguity. Is the player that died evil? Is the player that died a single killing Poe? Is it an assassin? Is it a, all those good, even a, a Lycan or a gambler? I mean, all these the old BMR standbys, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't see
Um,
Vigor changing, honestly. I mean, from what I know of the characters that are released, I don't see anything that really stands out as like a better replacement for either of those three niche roles.
sure. We will, of course, have more characters to play with down the line, but I don't know that there's any chance
Including
that,
Thursday.
including Thursday, yeah, which is actually something we need to talk about later, but we'll get to that. Um, but yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if we'll have a new demon for you to play with on Thursday, Habby. Maybe we will, maybe we won't.
I have no
Um,
idea.
no, I also have no idea. Um, but maybe we will, maybe we won't. Don't know if that'll be something that feeds into it, but we'll see. So you also mentioned that the minions are quite sneaky. It's interesting that you say that with a minion like the Widow, which of course does um, give it the public statement, and the Pit Hag, which might do. Were those the most likely minions that for you to consider? Have you changed the minion lineup? I know you mentioned that. I think you mentioned that you did. But yeah, tell us why you picked these ones.
Minion Suite is. I know we're kind of going in opposite order. I know we usually go top to bottom, but I think that in this particular script, it makes sense going bottom to top because I think the real mystery in this script is knowing what your evil team is, and I think that that is the fundamental crux of the puzzle of this script. Widow is for sure the loudest one, and I say that because in actual gameplay, the Pit Hag usually ends up more working as kind of an optimization for their evil team and trying to kind of, again, evil knows in this script that one of their biggest advantages is staying quiet and creating too many worlds for town to consider. So is it a poisoner? Is it a godfather that just hasn't procced, etc.? The pit hag usually ends up doing a lot more maintenance on their evil team and doing plays like cycling out an assassin or changing a demon to create confusion, that kind of thing. So the pit hag, I think, ends up being a lot more quiet in this script than it does in a lot of other scripts, especially in SNV. That's not to say that there aren't good plays that you can do with a pit hag to mess with good and mess with the good players. But there's a lot of things you can do, and I think that um, as a pit hag in the script, I think this is very much, maybe that's part of the reason I like it so much is because pit hag's my favorite character, but this is a this is kind of like a pit hag's paradise. Like you can do a lot as a pit hag on this script. And there's a lot of options depending on what the situation is. And there's not always an optimal play. There's just a lot of good plays you can make. Um Godfather wasn't originally on the script, but it came in simply because, well, better kill power and outsider manipulation. Um, because the big thing is night deaths are an important part of the script and the lack thereof or the amount that there are, because night deaths can happen so many different ways on this script, and because of that, um, you need things like assassin and godfather just to kind of bolster the ranks. And there's an argument to be made that they're actually actively detrimental in Leviathan games. I would actually disagree with that. I think that getting kills as the evil team is still important just because it gets votes out of the way. And it helps narrow down worldviews, and it helps make it so that you can kind of control the narrative, so to speak, with a demon that doesn't actually kill at night.
Yeah, you very much preempted one of my next questions there, Javi. I have to say about the assassin and the Godfather and how they work with Leviathan, as well as all the good characters that can kill with Leviathan.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, and again, like technically, Pithead can cause kills as well. I mean, sometimes it is optimal, whether there's a Leviathan going into a Leviathan or out of a Leviathan, or going from Pithead to Vigo or vice versa. You, or sorry, from Poe to Vigor or vice versa. Sometimes you kind of, as the evil team, say, you know what, we're going to give up our efficacy at night and kind of leave things in the storyteller's hands and see where it goes. And sometimes those kills, regardless of how telling they may be, um, end up being beneficial for the evil team.
do you have any thoughts on that, Nathan? Having seen it been played a few times, do you think it works? I know that you're someone who tends to shy away from putting Leviathan with killing characters, but how do you feel it works on this script?
I do tend to shy away from it just because I think that, a lot of Leviathan's strength is that at the end of the game, there are so many demon candidates still living, and Town has very, very limited executions to get rid of that. So, um, I think that it can work if the evil team is smart about the choices that they make, and if the storyteller is careful with the choices that they have to make with regards to things like who the gossip kill ends up killing, right? If you are in a Leviathan game and you eliminate too many of the demon candidates, it becomes very difficult for the evil team to potentially win off of that. So it's definitely something I tend to shy away from, but this script does also have other routes available to them most of the time, right? Like, there is a pit hag on the script, and if one is in play, then they can change it out of a Leviathan if they don't want, or they can change it into a Leviathan late in the game if they want. That's part of the danger of the pit hag Leviathan, right? But it's definitely something that can be a little bit tricky for evil to play around. I think that they can do it if they do it with restraint and careful consideration, though.
Let's talk about that Pit Hag for a second then, because Pit Hag has three characters that I don't often necessarily enjoy seeing it comboed with, namely the Assassin, because the Pit Hag can just create an assassin and get a kill on the same night. Like it's obviously not the only reason, but there's a reason that the Pit Hag and the demons have arbitrary deaths is to prevent new characters from getting double kills on the same night they're created. You have the Poe, because of course a Poe will know that there's going to be arbitrary deaths tonight, so you might as well just charge and get a free 3 kills tomorrow. And of course the Leviathan itself, which doesn't enjoy a jinx with the uh, Pit Hag in the same way that, say, Riot does, which is that if Leviathan is created by a Pit Hag after day 5, you would play for one more day. Instead of that, the evil team just wins. Have you ever found that those have been problems? Have you ever found that Leviathan has been an unsatisfying end to the game if it gets put in late game? Have you ever found that the evil team have too much killing power that the good team um, not necessarily couldn't expect, but kind of couldn't expect if you're expecting the Pit Hag to be quiet? Have you ever found those to be issues that you face? And do you think that Leviathan should have a jinx with Pit Hag the same way that Riot does?
I personally don't. I haven't seen it happen that many times, and I know that that could just be small sample size and whatnot. But I think that if Town gets the inclination, I know again, like I said, most of the minions on the script are very quiet. However, by day 5, or let's just even say day 4, Town probably will have a pretty good idea, no, regardless of how well coordinated evil is, as to what type of game it is. Either by outsider count, the Leviathan announcement, the Widow call, they're going to start to kind of figure it out and start putting pieces together and be able to figure out what minion is in play. And if there is a inclination that there may be a pit hag in play, Town has to play the game differently. And again, this goes back to the title of the script and the strategy of it, of what side are you picking? What is your choice going into this? How are you going to play it? If Town is given the what's the word I'm looking for? If Town is given suspicion that there is a pit hag in play, they have to play around that accordingly. And if they think that they haven't executed the pit hag, they have to go into day 5, or they have to go into day 4, I should say, realizing, and I guess day 5 as well, that if they don't do things correctly, the pit hag could cause an instant win. And I personally don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with pit hag creating a Leviathan on night 5 and or on night 6 and just winning the game. I think that if it's so, I cannot stress to you, it's so hard to get there. It requires so much coordination and so much good luck and so much social engineering to get to that point that I would imagine that if you are if you are the evil team and you manage to pull that off, I think that really the only people that or that good has to blame for themselves at that point is themselves, because if you're really getting themselves into that kind of a situation, that's rough, and I think that that's got to be. I don't see a reason to continue on the game into day 6. I don't see a reason for it.
Okay. how about with the Poe and the Assassin then? The other part of that, I guess, two-part question. How have you found that Pit Hag plays with those two?
Um, Poe is obviously kind of its own animal. I think that the idea of getting a free charge is, I don't want to say it's negligible per se, but I mean, as a storyteller, you're not going to, in most situations, signal that there was a Pit Hag demon change by killing two players that night, and then also grant the Poe a wish of being able to get a triple kill the following night. And obviously, there are situations in which you can have a gossip kill or a gambler kill or something like that, um, or a tinker dies or whatever that hides the fact that there was a Pit Hag demon change. But as a storyteller, you have your discretion when it comes to that, and I think that as a storyteller, you enable the situation in which you are going to create an equally fair opportunity for both teams to be able to do what they need to do. Um, and I think in doing so, you need to have. I think that having the Poe charge on a Pit Hag Demon Change night is potentially. I mean, it's powerful. I don't necessarily think that it's very game breaking. I think that if players go into it understanding that that's a thing that can be done with the Pit Hag, I don't necessarily see that as an issue. And as far as the assassin concerned, I mean, again, it takes a lot of time. It's you wait till day 2 for an assassin to go. You pit hag them out into something else, and then on day 3 you have to pit hag them again, and then they get an assassin. It gives up a lot of the efficacy of both roles, both the assassin and the pit hag. The assassin has to basically pick blindly into that just because they don't want to waste their shot, and then the pit hag has to give up their whole ability just cycling out assassins. I don't necessarily know that that's necessary. I don't think that that's always going to be the best strategy. I think that I understand the apprehension to do all of these things, but I think that in if you balance out the good side of the script to be able to allow for these things to make sense, I don't necessarily think that it's a problem.
Um, I don't know if you have any thoughts on either of those two, like mini concerns, Navian.
Yeah, I don't mind Pit Hag Assassin for kind of the same reason that was mentioned, that if they want to do it multiple times in a game, they do have to like spend the extra time pit hagging them out, then pit hagging them back in, and all of these players have to survive. And the only time that they're necessarily guaranteed to survive is if it's a Leviathan game, and if it's a Leviathan game, then um, you maybe don't want the assassin killing multiple people anyway, right? So I think Pit Hag Assassin is all right, generally speaking here. The
So,
Pit Hag Poe
sorry,
is probably.
just so both of you, maybe I should just clarify what I meant. I meant the assassin is basically the only minion. I suppose Godfather 2, but that's a lot more niche. That can act after the pit hag is the only thing that I meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like if you have a Pit Hag alive at the end of the game to make an assassin, then yeah, the good team might be screwed. But that is true of an assassin who was in the game at the start anyway. Like, it's
I think it's
definitely a
negligible.
script where if you suspect that you have a pit hag in this game, you probably want to try to prioritize taking that pit hag out, potentially even before taking a demon out, right? Like there's definitely things on the script that make the pit hag an incredibly dangerous minion, more so than maybe on other scripts. So um I don't want to say, oh, if the good team doesn't find the pit hag in time, it's their own fault for losing, because I don't like to view the game in that way. I think that's a very negative and critical and judgmental way of viewing the game. But like the good team should be strongly trying to figure out if they think a pit hag is in the game and try their best to find that pit hag and get rid of it. And if they miss, they miss. That does suck, but it's definitely a dangerous minion here. I'm a little bit more questionable on like the pit hag Poe thing, because it is just very much like an optimized strategy where if your pit hag makes a Poe, you just immediately charge. And I've been a storyteller in pit hag Poe situations like that, and one of the times that I had that happen was the only time that I have actually killed more than 2 players in a pit hag arbitrary demon change, because um I couldn't kill Zero because it was like a making a new player a demon. I think it was so like the old demons still had to die, and couldn't kill just two because it would actually put it in the final day, but it would not give enough of a hint to the players that it was a final day. Like they wouldn't realize that, oh no, we have a Poe who just got created and charged, and now we have to execute the demon today or we're just going to lose. So I ended up having to kill more than two players, and I can't remember exactly how many ended up being killed. I think it might have been three, but like it was kind of needed in order to have a balanced game. And I think that can be one of the huge problems of Pithead Poe is that you might end up in that sort of like mid to late game scenario where you're like, well, shit, I can't kill Zero, but I also can't kill just two, and now I need to kill either three or four, which are both really weird numbers and feel punishing to like both teams.
Yeah, it's almost like a de facto fiddler, like you're pushing the game along arbitrarily.
Yeah, and I don't think that necessarily feels like the best interaction in the world, but you know.
Yeah, sometimes with the pit hag, particularly on custom scripts, there is that element of, you've just got to. I think I've done that a couple of times, like a bunch of kills. Just quickly, we had a quick clarifying question in chat a while ago. I did see it. I just wanted to wait until we reached a natural pause in the conversation. Habby, obviously the Leviathan can be poisoned, which prevents the announcement from being made.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
does the Leviathan, if you kill two good players while the Leviathan's poisoned, what happens?
While the Leviathan's poisoned, nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, so
I mean,
just be
the Leviathan has to see it. The Leviathan has to put the token down, and if it doesn't have the ability, it can't put the token down.
So to be clear, if the Leviathan is ever drunk or poisoned, then those kills do not count towards the Leviathan's win condition. However, the Leviathan does say day five, not your fifth day, so it does still count days. So if the Leviathan ever becomes unpoisoned after the fifth day, yeah, you've just lost the game.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Again, this is where the Leviathan again. A Leviathan is meant to be as a and everybody knows I love Leviathan. I think it's a fantastic character. I think it's a very underappreciated character. I've already told Andrew Nathanson that when we get to the custom or the off base 3 characters on Cult of the Clock Tower, I've already reserved my spot for Leviathan because I have
yeah.
so much to say. But the thing of it is that it is just a lot of people are like, well, if you it has like it's really punishing to good, and it changes the way that good is going to play the game. Yeah, that's the point. The point is that once you get that announcement out there, it's going to change the game, and it's going to change how everybody is going to play because of how powerful it is.
I actually have a follow-up question to the question about why there's no psychopath on the script. Because
Hmm.
Rochambeau himself, of course, was a French noble. So where's the noble?
Funnily enough, I think when I first wrote this script, this didn't actually have no. We didn't even have noble yet.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it was pre-noble.
It was also
uh,
pre-psychopath, yeah.
it was pre-psychopath too, and everybody got on my ass about that. But the the script actually originally had a librarian as a start knowing bit of information. I've since changed that out because librarian didn't actually really do a whole lot. I think that if I was to put a you start knowing townsfolk in here besides, I mean, bounty hunter, but I mean, it's barely a you start knowing. And I guess night watchman a lot of people consider as kind of a you start knowing, even though it's not. Um, I think that if I was to put something on here, I think that like your shugenjas, your clockmakers, your chefs would probably be a little bit too powerful, and I think librarian and uh, oh my god, investigator probably would. I think investigator would probably be a little bit too powerful too. If I was, yeah, I think noble would probably be the start knowing I would probably put on here.
Well, there you go. That's why there's no psychopath on it. It's because it's a reference to the French revolutionary and general and nobleman. Oh, that's a good point. Where's general? That's another one.
He wasn't a general.
He was a general, I'm pretty sure.
Rochambeau? No, I think he was a marquis. but I don't know if he was a general necessarily.
Wasn't he an American general?
No, no, he was French.
Yeah, he was French, but he was a general in the American army. Yeah, he was a
He
French
was on.
nobleman and general whose army played a critical role in helping the United States.
Okay, Wikipedia. Okay, fine, that's
Yeah, there
fine.
we go. Wikipedia.
Okay, well, fine. He achieved the rank of general. Congratulations.
It-
How would general fit
Wikipedia
onto this
says
script?
marshal.
Thank you.
I mean, that is a type of general.
I wouldn't know. I'm just
Uh,
reading what Wikipedia says his rank was.
and the marshal hasn't been released yet. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
What are you talking about? Marshall is everywhere in this community.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going
Shouts
to
to
make that
Marshall.
joke.
We love Marshall.
We do.
Yeah, I think general on the script is actually. I mean, again, if there was an area where the script where I feel like there could be improvements made, it would probably be in the townsfolk section. I don't know if general probably fits all that well, though. I think it might be, if anything, it would probably replace Oracle, but I don't necessarily think that's even really very helpful.
Let's talk about the townsfolk then. Um, we've got and the one that immediately draws my eye is that you have a D tier townsfolk from our script building series in the courtier, which we
Sure do.
ranked as one of the hardest townsfolk, one of the hardest characters to build a script around. What do you feel
Mm-hmm.
like it does on this script?
I'll be honest, Courtier has been off and on this script for a very long time. Its initial impression on the script was to create overtime, as I called it, which is uh, doing a night 4 courtiering of the Leviathan so that you can go past day 5, which I thought was hysterical. But it turns out that it actually has a little bit of a better function as kind of like a glass cannon sort of character, kind of a push your luckish sort of character, because again, character type matters a ton on this script, or specifically, character matters a lot on this script. If you know that there's a Leviathan in play, Courtier acts as a kind of failsafe to be like, all right, let's just get some people executed. I know that I'm the Courtier, and I quote unquote know that I'm sober, so let's start executing people because I think it's safe. But again, the courtier has to go all in. They have to know what it is that they're courtiering, and I think that it was originally switched out for engineer whenever engineer got released, because I thought engineer played very well into the pick a side, Rochambeau, change your strategy kind of thing. But that was before I realized that the engineer is probably my least favorite character of all time. So it has since come back to being the courtier.
I remember when Engineer released and before it was even put like properly on the script tool, you had sent me a DM to be like, "Hey, so can you edit Rochambeau to have Engineer on it?" And so I hand
I was
edited
so excited.
the
I was so
image to
excited.
put Engineer on because that's how excited you were because you had been waiting for so long for
I
Engineer
sure
to be
was.
released to put it on Rochambeau. And then when you played it and you were like, "Oh man, this character sucks."
You do not want to get me going on engineer. I'd be here all day, but it did not end up being what this script needed. So
Tangent
it
number
has since
four
gone back
incoming.
to being courtier. What's that?
Tangent number four incoming. EAP
No,
time.
everybody knows all about the EAP. I'm not gonna spout off about the EAP yet again.
Well,
Chat,
for those who don't know, it's the Engineer Asterisk project.
Just give the character a fucking asterisk and just call it a day. We can just move on.
I have a similar project, but mine is for the preacher.
I think the preacher should just be deleted personally, but that's just me.
Well, you've got it on the script, so tell us about that.
Um, it is the most effective anti minion weapon that town has access to. Um, Shutting down the minions in this script severely hurts evil on this script more than pretty much any other script. Um, and that I found, at least. This is a very minions do a lot of the heavy lifting on this script, so having a preacher to be able to knock them out is important. I think that it is better in bigger numbers, obviously, because then it's less kind of just slapshot, just throw it out there and just see what happens. But uh, I I find that if there were to be a script in which Preacher could shine, it would be one like this, where the minions are doing pretty much all of the work. And I found that it's not it's not unfun on this script, but I can't say that it's fun either. I just know that it feels like kind of a necessary evil to be able to keep evil in check.
I think that it's not necessarily this script that makes Preacher like unfun to a lot of people. I think that that's kind of an issue with the role itself that some people have, which is to say that you don't necessarily get like good confirmation that you've actually done anything on in the game, right? You don't know if you've had an impact because you can't really tell. You pick somebody and you do that to the best of your ability based on other people's information or social reads, or preferably a combination of both, right? But it's hard to feel like you're actively participating in the game, even if you hit a minion and your ability is actively affecting the game. It's hard to feel like you personally are really having a strong active role for some people. So I don't think that's necessarily a problem with like the script in general as it is with like Preacher as a role and the problems that people do have with it.
Uh,
I find that it is a character that I think that my issue with it is less that it is it a lot of people would say like, okay, well, if Preacher is not fun, then what about like, what about Exorcist? And I don't know if you know this, guys, from looking at Jeff's site, but Exorcist is not exactly a very popular townsfolk either. It doesn't end up on a lot of custom scripts.
I mean, I would say like Preacher's job is to shut down minions, right? I would think that
Mhm.
your more direct analogous potential replacement would be Town Crier, right? Because you can get information about who minions are and potentially eliminate them that way instead.
No, no, I know. I'm just saying. I'm talking about mechanically what the character does. The shutting down a demon for the night is what the Exorcist does. Shutting down a minion for the night is what the Preacher does. Unfortunately, the Preacher does it forever. And I know I actually had a version of this script way back that actually did have both Town Crier and Flower Girl on it. Um, and I think what ended up happening was I said Flower Girl is important to stay, but Town Crier felt a little too punishing. Funnily enough, Town Crier felt a little too punishing, and I ended up changing it to Preacher. Um, I think that the problem I always have a problem with things other than Sex and Violence having Flower Girl and Town Crier on a script simply because it feels like it dissuades nomination and voting from evil, which is kind of important on this script.
Well,
Um,
to be fair, I also think maybe you should get rid of Flower Girl.
okay, we can explore that. But tell me, why do you think that? Sorry, I'm hosting right now. I'm so sorry,
no, please
Alejo. I
do.
jumped into host mode.
I mean,
Uh,
you're. Go ahead.
uh, why does Flower Girl need to go?
I mean, I think it's particularly difficult if it is a Leviathan game. I think that it has even more of those sort of like, we need to control what the rest of town is doing in order for me to get information. There is no Vortox in a binary role, which, to be fair, Town Crier would also have that problem. Yes, there's Widow and Poisoner, and there is a Pit Hag that could take them out, I guess. But um, I think it's still worse in a Flower Girl because of the fact that, good wins by finding the demon and not necessarily the minions, even if the minions are quite dangerous in this script potentially. Um, Everybody's still going to, especially early game, prioritize trying to find those demon candidates. So, it, it's quite difficult for evil to potentially play around in a Leviathan game depending on what minions you put in play. And again, very limited misinformation sources here. So I would say, like, I would take Flower Girl out and then put, like, maybe consider putting Town Crier back in instead of Preacher,
Okay,
or just replace Flower Girl with something else. I mean, we can talk about what I think could go really well on the script later when we get to sort of like more of the revision based
sure.
stage.
So there was that.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead, Alejo.
Uh, I'm going to ask you kind of something that I was going to ask you a lot later, but it's kind of come up there. Um, a lot of people say that for a good script, you can just draw characters from a bag, and whatever you get, you'll like. Like that's how it is for TB. But TB is the only script that you can basically the only script that you can really do that with. But there's a kind of a range, right? Whereas some people are quite happy to build a script that will work once with a very specific interaction set of interactions, and then never touch the script again. Uh, where do you think that this script fits on that? Do you think that there are? Do you think that it's possible to just pull characters out from a bag on the script and have it work? Given that you have three such different demons, do you think that all of the townsfolk work well against all of them? Um, for instance, and the Flower Girl is an example of that. If the evil team happen to not have the ability to kill, is Flower Girl too strong against Leviathan?
I would say that this is definitely a script that does not favor just grab things out of a bag and throw them on the Grim. I think this is one that does take a little bit of careful consideration for what sort of character configuration that you're using, and that's not necessarily saying that it's not balanced necessarily. I personally don't view this script as being balanced, but that's also just because it's a custom script. It's not meant to be balanced. But I don't think that it's wildly imbalanced either. I think that simply just by nature of the selection of the characters that are on this script, that kind of shotgun character tokens onto the Grim and kind of go with it thing is simply just not going to work. I think that there are far too many powerful abilities that do different things and some that overlap in some way that make it so that doing a situation like that is not the best. Now, I'm not going to say that it's like going to fail. If you did decide to do that, it's going to fail 90% of the time because I don't think it will. But I do think that this is a script that's geared more towards storytellers who have a specific setup that they want to use.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the things that I think that when we built that game, Navian, that was one of the things that you and well, we were kind of struggling with, because we ended up putting a Leviathan in play, uh, and I think that it was quite hard to get a lot of the characters to necessarily work with that. But maybe if we tried, we would have found that things would have worked better than we expected. I don't know if you've run the scripts times other than that, Navian. I don't know if that's something that you found to be a consistent issue.
I do not have the memory capacity to make any meaningful comment here.
Fair enough.
Listen, I mean the big alarming flashing red light thing about this script is the fact that it is not a solo Leviathan script. It is a Leviathan on a script. A Leviathan is a demon that is typically either on a script all by itself or is with demons that are very similar in its kind of game structural changing nature, like Legion, etc. That is the big thing that I think a lot of people notice when they first notice it, and rightly so. It's very uncommon, and it's because Leviathan is really hard to write a script for. It's a very unique ability, it's a very public ability, and because of that, it means that you really only have a few ways of doing it. And I think trying to do something where you have a Leviathan on what is quote unquote a traditional style script is very difficult, and that was part of the reason why I wrote it the way that I did, is because it was challenging and I wanted to kind of take that challenge on when I first started writing the script.
Of course. Um, Maybe we need more of the characters from its home script if it has one.
Yeah, which who knows?
Yeah. Maybe we'll get something that works perfectly for it this week.
Hmm.
Um, Speaking of issues with um, the Leviathan has a lot of jinxes that are, shall we say, controversial. You've got two jinxes with the Leviathan on this script, with the Innkeeper and the Mayor. How do you feel about them?
The Mare one makes sense. The Mare one is literally just the only way that makes sense of running it with the Leviathan. I've been a big fan of that Jinx from the beginning. I have no issues with it. I think it's fine. The Innkeeper one, I'm less happy about. I think that it is a workaround to a issue that I think exists merely by the fact that those two characters really should not be on the same script together. And I understand that I'm saying that as a person who put them on the same script together. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because you need to make sure that in situations like this that you have an understanding as to what you can do and to make it so that the innkeeper is not a wasted role. We don't want it so that the innkeeper is in play and is literally just a villager because what they're doing is nothing, or at the very worst case, being an outsider by drunking someone. But I think that I don't know. It ends up just kind of being a necessary evil. It is what it is. It's I innkeeper is in as a source of protection, but also as a source of potential misinformation for town. And I think that it kind of plays a pretty important role on the script unless there's something that can do it better. And I think that unfortunately, in order for those two to exist, that Jinx needs to exist.
I am forced to agree that like I love the Mayor Jinx with Leviathan. I think that's great. No problems with that. But the Innkeeper one is definitely one of the ones that I consider to be a bad Jinx. But at the same time, like I do really feel like the script benefits from Innkeeper being on here for other reasons, right? When you have
Yep.
multiple killers like Poe, it's more balanced to have the Innkeeper around to help prevent too many deaths, like the game being go too quickly. It's also useful when you have a lycanthrope because it can provide just another source where the lycanthrope might miss that isn't just explicitly, well, you just like must be evil, right? So I think Innkeeper works with like many of the other roles here. It also has interesting interactions, of course, with Assassin, but can still block a Godfather. It can force the storyteller to make certain choices on pit hag arbitrary death knights, for example. If you want to kill any of the players protected, you have to kill the innkeeper first. Um, so like it does have interesting interactions with everything else. I think that like I think it's a bad jinx and I don't like it, but at the same time, if you are a leviathan, you can also just sort of like be very careful or minimal with your nominations so that you're not going to end up in a situation where you're just hard outed.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the jinx there is that if the Leviathan nominates and executes a player that the innkeeper chose, that player does not die. Um, it's also, and the jinx with Maya is that on the fifth day, if nobody is executed, the good team wins instead of the evil team. Um, I
Has the wording been updated to say your team yet, or does it still say good team?
That's
uh,
a great question.
I don't think it can say your team. It would have to be the mayor's team, but I think it still says the good
It
team.
says good. It says good
It does still say
explicitly.
good.
I
I'm
know
aware that
that
we
there
need
was discussion about that being changed.
we need to take a short break, but before we do that, I have one question that it wouldn't really make sense to separate from that last one. Nadine, why don't you talk to us about how much you love the other jinx on the script between the lycanthrope and the gambler?
Oh, you mean that it sucks?
Yeah, how do you both feel about that one on
I
the
mean,
script?
it's not the worst jinx in the world. It makes sense for the jinx to be what it is, but it does put much more ambiguity on certain situations. So it's not the best jinx in the world. It's not the worst jinx in the world, but I don't particularly like it.
It's
Uh,
fine. It's exactly fine. It is no better than fine or worse than fine. It does what you need to do. I personally find that it is one of the only ways to make what I think is inherently a bad character in Lycanthrope work on scripts. And yes, I know that again, just like with Preacher, I am saying that as someone who has that character on their script.
Okay, we're going to take a short 5-10 minute break at this point, because well, we're going to take a short 5-10 minute break, and then we'll continue talking. I think when we get back, we'll be talking about some of the other characters that are. So yeah, if you need to head off, now will be a time. When we get back, we're going to be talking about some of the other characters that we've not touched on, and then offering some thoughts on how that we would if we would make any changes, what those would be. But I'm going to take this opportunity while we have that break, to we'll field any questions that you got in chat. I can see that you're talking about whether, strictly speaking, the Jinx says that the that the does the mayor need to be in play or not to function? So strictly speaking, is it just impossible basically for the evil team to win in a mayor script? It's clearly that's how it's intended to be. But yeah. But yeah, it is inconsistent with some of the other wordings. It would just be a fairly simple change, so I would support that for clarity's sake, if nothing else. I can see that Nadine, you have your own opinions. Uh,
Mm,
uh,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, if you've got any questions that you want to ask me and Nadine, the next few minutes, then we'll take them. But if not, I'm just gonna quickly say what's coming on this channel for the next for the next week or so. Of course, we have stream tomorrow where we're going to be playing this script along with something else. I'm not sure what the other thing is going to be at this time. Hopefully, Jojo will be with me for that one. If not, then I'll be by myself. That's fine. I don't think that Demeda can make it, unfortunately. It would have been nice, but timing is hard. We live in different continents. It's understandable. On Sunday, we're going to be playing with the brand new character. We'll have a script written. We'll be playing at least 2 games with the new character. We might have some seats available if you want to play with us. We probably will on Tuesday as well, so feel free to join us for that. And then next Monday, I pitched something to Navian, and they said, "Yeah, let's try it." We're going to have back-to-back weeks of script notes for the first time ever. And for this one, we are going to help you to build yourself a script with the new character. Um, Obviously, there's a character on Thursday. We're gonna talk you through the character. We're gonna put it on our tier list, of course, and then we're gonna build a couple of scripts with it. We'll help each other to put them together. I think we've not really talked about how exactly we're going to do it, Nadian. So I guess we could kind of do that now while we're just waiting for Habby to get back. Um, my thinking is that one of us builds a script and explains why we're doing everything to the other and to chat, and then the other builds a script, and that should fill up like an hour and a half, 2 hours. What do you think?
Sure, we can do it that way.
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that we're just going to go through script building around a character rather than script building with a person, and the character, of course, will be the new character because I'm sure that TPI will have um, their own script competition that they can they're going to want to that you might want to enter. So we figured it would be a nice new thing to do to help you out with your script building. And if it proves to be popular, if you enjoy it, and if we enjoy it, of course, maybe we'll do it again next month when there's a new character. Although next month will be Christmas, the sort of holiday period. So maybe we will, maybe we won't. Can't really say at this time how how our stream or my stream is going to be affected by the holiday period. Um, but if if you all enjoy our new um, format that we'll be doing next week, maybe we'll do it again come January. And if we enjoy it, of course, maybe we'll do it again come January. Yeah, I think that that's pretty much everything that we've got coming up. So join us next week for that one. Navian, is there anything that you wanna plug? Well, obviously, you'll get a chance to repeat it at the end of the stream, but just so that we've got some time to fill.
Well, you can catch me on Fridays on Connecticut Blood on the Clock Tower with today's guest, Habby. I will not actually be here this Friday because I will be going to PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia. So if you are going there, then I will possibly see you there. Otherwise, I can catch you not this coming Friday, but the Friday after that on my usual spot on Connecticut Blood on the Clock Tower.
You so many conventions.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it. Um,
I've never been before, but there was a lot of really interesting panels there that I intend on going to.
what are you seeing?
There's a lot of panels on like various diversity within the board gaming community that I'm particularly interested in seeing.
Okay.
There's one that looked really funny, which is GMs giving like bad advice only.
Um, sure. Let me know how that one goes.
I'm hoping that it will be as funny as it sounds.
Yeah. Is that streamed? I might catch that if I get a chance. I mean, it'll probably be in the middle of the night, so I probably won't. But
I have no idea.
uh, um, And I think that you're probably going to be back joining me on Tuesdays, start of next year. Is that right?
Hard to say for sure.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see you at the start of 2024 then. But if we don't, we don't. Um, yeah. So do join Habby on Friday. Obviously, I'll give them both chance to express this later, but we had to take a short intermission and we had to fill it with something. I think I don't know if there's anything else really we either of us need to talk about. You know
We can
anything?
fill it with.
We could do that. I was running a game of oh yeah, I was running a game of Paranoia last night, and it was extremely funny because every time friend computer wanted to say something to the players, I just did this. Where is it? Oh no, I've lost. Oh, there it is. If you've ever played Paranoia, you know why that's funny. I guess we can also talk about the many, many heinous crimes that Beat the Meat did that you'll never forgive him for.
You mean nothing at all ever?
I love Beat
The
the Meat
Meep
so
has never
much.
done anything wrong in the Meep's life.
All hail the Most High.
This is a Doctor Who thing for anybody who's not aware. Even if you don't watch Doctor Who, you should definitely go look up Beep the Meep.
I was utterly baffled when they decided to put Beat the Meat in. As somebody who has read the Fourth Doctor comic from about 20 years ago, it was just the absolute wildest choice to put Beat the Meat in the 60th anniversary special. Can we talk about Navian's Nightless script needing Artist Mayor to be changed? Do you? I don't know what that's a reference to, but I'm sure you do.
Well, that would be No Night Ultimate Clock Tower, right?
Oh right, yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a joke script. It's not supposed to be good. Although I do actually think there are a couple of changes that could be made to it to improve it. But I'm also aware that you absolutely did not intend anybody to ever play this, and it would
That
be
is correct.
it would be extremely weird of me to go, here are a whole bunch of changes to this script that you know is bad.
It was written to be bad. It will stay bad. I mean, it was written with an express It was not only written with an express purpose in mind. It has characters modified to force that purpose to happen. So, does anything really need to be changed on it? No, it doesn't.
And you say you don't do homebrew.
Um, no, I do like house rule stuff all the time.
That's true.
I dabble in it where it's needed.
Yeah, just if you missed the context of that one, do go and yeah, Gambling didn't enjoy that first game, unfortunately. But that, to be fair, that was entirely because of the three character combination. That again, it wasn't supposed to be a good script, so it wasn't a good script. Um,
Yeah, who'd have thought if you play a script written to be bad that it turns out bad?
but I do recommend going back and watching that one for the second game of No Night Ultimate Clock Tower when I put a Veiled in, so nobody knew what their character was, and none of the characters woke at all. Um, and they ended up okay. I won't say too much because I reckon recommend that you should go watch it. But one of the few things I will say that they did was I put the traveler I dealt the traveler token out because you didn't actually put it in as a custom traveler. You put it in as a custom fourth type, fifth type, sixth type, I guess, or at least that's the way that the
Seventh.
Stefan tool read it. Oh hey, Habby.
Seventh.
And one of the things that happened was the traveler died when they were nominated because people didn't realize they were voting for an exile rather than execution. Anyway, welcome back, Habby.
Hello.
We were talking. What did we talk about during that? We talked about things that are coming up. We talked about Navian's No Night Ultimate Clock Tower, which is a great script that everyone should play. And we talked about Beep the Meep.
Excellent.
But now we're going to continue our discussion of Rochambeau. We've talked about the jinxes. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to say on that one. But yeah, let's go back to our townsfolk, which was where we kind of were.
Yep.
The lycanthrope. How do you feel like that plays into the Rochambeau strategy element of it?
Rochambeau is a script that revolves around night deaths and night death ambiguity. Lycanthrope, for better or worse, provides night death ambiguity. Um, it is a townsfolk that can kill, and it is also a thing that I feel oftentimes is ends up being a problematic character to add to pretty much any script. Um, I was looking when originally writing the script for townsfolk that could kill at night and could change what, or at least manipulate what kind of night deaths are happening. So, innkeeper, gambler, tinker, lycanthrope, etc., preacher to a lesser degree. And it is not, I'll put it this way, it's not something I'm married to on this script. I think that it can definitely be replaced with something better, or at least something a little bit more harmonious with the rest of the script. But the function that it provides is Good's ability to be able to provide kills at night and to counter whatever the demon ends up being. Unfortunately, most of the time, if that demon happens to be the Leviathan, it just basically ends up winning Good the game.
Sure. Um, I when I looked at it, I thought the lycanthrope was particularly interesting character to have, given that it's the only really thing. It's the only thing that really can on the good team play into that, um, into the lack of knowledge as to the demon type rather than the knowledge of the demon type.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of plays for the evil team in that way, but like you say, it's also potentially very strong for the good team, which is, I suppose, kind of lycanthrope through and through, really, isn't it?
It really is. I
Um,
think that when I wrote the script originally, I didn't realize and again, I think this is another thing that's going to come up is the fact that Rochambeau is a very old script. It's gone through a lot of iterations and it has a framework that I was working with when I started making it. And that framework, when I started making it, was coming from a person who doesn't have the experience that I have now in terms of interactions and just generally not feels good characters and just their overall ability. And I guess something like, say, the Alejo F. Black channel tier list, these kind of resources were just not available. I figure I give you a plug there.
yeah, you flatter me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So one of the things we like to talk about quite often when we see a script is every character doing something unique, and if not, why have you got multiple characters who are doing something similar? Are there
Sure.
any gaps to be fulfilled? And I think for the most part, most of these townsfolk do something different to each other. You don't have a grandmother and a pixie. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have an innkeeper and a monk. You do have an undertaker and a cannibal. How do you feel like they play together on the script?
The Undertaker and Cannibal were both on the script for the function of providing good with reason or at least impetus to execute, which you'd think they don't need. But it turns out that when there's not a Vortox on a script and there's information that could be gleaned by what happens at night, uh, it turns and specifically night deaths or lack thereof, players tend to not execute, and especially when townsfolk abilities are as powerful as the ones that are here. So Undertaker and Cannibal were added to the script as a way of motivating and encouraging executions for the town. And yes, they do overlap quite a lot, but I think that they serve distinctly different functions in this regard, in the fact that a lot of these roles have ways to basically be entered into trust circles once they've been confirmed by the mechanics of their ability. I think that the cannibal uh, is a little bit more, can be messed with a little bit more than an Undertaker can. So while those two do have an overlap, I think that they do serve different functions. One is to gain abilities and basically be kind of like a do-over, whereas the other is supposed to glean information. So it's a bit of an overlap, but I think that when I was originally building the script, it was just that the players that were playing the script just were not executing, and they needed a little bit of motivation to execute.
Megan?
Sorry, the question was about Undertaker Cannibal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not usually a fan of putting them both on the same script. I think that they cover the same niche but in slightly different ways, and that makes them generally overly redundant.
I'm not married to it. I'm not married to it.
Sure. Okay. We're gonna just try and yeah, speed up a little bit, I think. With the cannibal, the only piece of one and done thing that you've really got, technically courtier is once per game, but it's also for 3 nights, is the night watchman. How do you feel like the cannibal eating a night watchman plays?
Um, I think it's pretty powerful if confirmed. Um, I don't necessarily know if it's necessarily game breaking though. I think that it's pretty powerful, but I mean that creates a bit of a trust chain that also can be leading into another section can be changed by the fact that just because you're a townsfolk doesn't mean you're good.
It's true. Tell us about the bounty hunter.
Yeah. I think that Bounty Hunter was originally added because we I wanted to make the opportunity for good. There was this pipe dream of Leviathan with a bounty hunter as creating a evil lycanthrope to be able to just fuck with town, and it turns out that's just terrible. But I kept them together because I found that bounty hunter creates an interesting interaction where a lot of these townsfolk abilities are very powerful, and they don't necessarily all need to know who their evil team is to do well for evil. You know, um,
It is worth saying in this particular case, though, that it would be the cannibal that has to be evil there, because if the night watchman is evil, even though they're
it
the night
doesn't matter.
watchman, the
Yeah,
cannibal is still poisoned.
yeah. Evil cannibal is also hysterical, but how often
Yeah,
does that happen?
that's a fair question. What other characters do you think are interesting to make evil on this script? What do you enjoy turning with the bounty hunter?
Again, I used to enjoy turning basically everything in here evil, but now that I look at it, I find that evil lichen is clunky. We'll put it that way. Evil Night Watchman is hysterical. Evil Courtier, everyone does the Mullibach, and I find it very disheartening in that if you're an evil courtier, the first thing you do is you courtier the bounty hunter on night one, and I just find that so lame. You know,
Yeah,
it's that.
well, how did that work out for Molobach in that game?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So the point I'm making is that I think that I like Bounty Hunter for what it is, but it has not enough synergy with the townsfolk that are currently on this script to actually feel good. So I do find that I used to have a lot more fun with Bounty Hunter on this script before I started realizing that it just has a little bit too many non-bows.
Uh, what do you think, Nathan? What catches your fancy? You feeling like an evil mayor?
Obviously.
Well, yes, that's a
I
CT special.
Yeah, I think that pretty much anything here could be evil, but like I probably wouldn't be as inclined to do a preacher or an innkeeper because maybe an innkeeper, um, because they can try to target good players specifically to drunk them, but like they can also end up interrupting the evil team's plans with that. So innkeeper meh. Probably not a preacher because they would only ever exclusively hurt their own team, and I think that's not particularly fun or interesting for either the preacher or the rest of the evil team. Everything else is fine. Mullabach would like to know how the heck did the most obvious play get called the Mullabach?
Because
You
well, A,
won the
you did
race.
it, and B, it it's the most Mullibach play I can think of.
Well, that's what you get for making the most obvious plays, Mully.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a thing. That might
We interrupted your train of thought.
a little bit, yeah. Something about the. Oh yeah, that's it. Nothing bad ever happens when you have an evil innkeeper, right, Nathan?
Yeah, let's not think about that.
Okay. What have we not covered? We've not got into the
Outsiders.
outsiders at all, but are there any other townsfolk? I guess the Oracle. Obviously, Oracle is famously a good partner with the Vigor Mortis.
Yes.
But neither of the other outsiders tend to kill their minions. Sorry, other demons.
Wow, one of them
Um,
literally can't.
That's true.
one of them literally can't. Yeah. And I think that Oracle again, evil Oracle is very fun, knowing who to talk to or getting a general idea as to who to talk to. But I also like the idea. I think the reason why I liked Oracle on this script is because with as Oracle is a character that gains power as the game goes on. It's a kind of a push your luck role. If you continue to just out as Oracle, you're going to end up dying. But if you play things right, you can gain exceedingly powerful info, much in the same way as, say, a high priestess or a general or something like that. So it behooves you to kind of play shy about your oracleness until you can gain as much info, and then that info that you get is usually going to be very powerful. So I find that in a script where there's a lot of night deaths and you get rewarded for staying alive during nights where there's deaths, um, I think that this is a pretty bloodthirsty script, and I think that Oracle benefits a lot in scripts that are particularly bloodthirsty.
And finally, on the mayor, um, can the Poe not just bypass the mayor? Is that an issue?
It, it's like a 1% issue. I don't necessarily know if it's. I mean, the Poe has to actively work for it, and the mayor has to be known. And I think that if a Poe decides that they are going to try to kill a mayor early in the game and it ricochets to someone else, okay, that sucks for the mayor. But otherwise, I mean, the Poe has to have planned accordingly for that to get around the mayor ability.
I don't know. I don't think it's that hard for a Poe to do that.
Okay.
I once charged on Final Five to force a Final Five to be a final day.
And it sounds like it worked out.
It did actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They executed somebody else, and then I got to kill 3 people, and I got to be the last living player. It was great.
Okay. Let's talk about the outsiders then. You do have a goon on the script,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't notice until just now, actually. Um, how do you feel about that with the bounty hunter, with the potential for 2 extra evil players?
It's a possibility. Especially because one, two, three, four, five of your minions are pickers. Um, I think that this plays into an issue that if I had to cut one, I think I would feel much better about cutting bounty hunter than I would for cutting goon.
Sure. Um, the acrobat, when I did the rank all of your characters by how much you like them thing that was going around a
Mm-hmm.
few months back, it ended up as my dead last character.
Not surprised.
Which not hugely surprising, because my question with the acrobat is, why don't you just have a tinker? Well, you have a tinker.
Yeah,
What do they do differently in your opinion?
acrobat is meant to be kind of a tinker that helps in worlds in which you have either Vigo, Widow, or Poisoner. Um, I think that it is, and also there's an innkeeper in the script, but I think what it does is it does function as a townsfolk sometimes, but honestly, just as in the case with the Tinker, it's the variability of the night deaths that allow those two to be able to act as questionable deaths that keep more worlds open as to what because again the goal of the evil team is to make it so that town doesn't know what the evil team's composition is, and acrobat and tinker do similar aspects in that regard. I think that if I had to cut one, I would probably cut tinker and just kind of let it be. um, I think that acrobat actually it works better on this script because of the fact that it is Acrobat is often called a townsfolk because of the fact that it can usually confirm whether or not a neighbor is drunk or poisoned. In this case, I think that it actually ends up being more of an outsider by virtue of the fact that if an acrobat dies, they are going to assume that one of their good living neighbors is poisoned or drunk. And that's actually less likely on this script than it is on most other scripts. In most cases, if you're an acrobat and you died at night, you may have just died at night. And I think that ends up being it pushes that ends up pushing narratives and worlds onto good that evil might be able to benefit from by virtue of the fact that they end up actually being wrong and they end up tunneling on the idea that one of their good living neighbors is poisoned or drunk on the night that they died.
Yeah, you don't have too many of the characters that Acrobat is horrible with, like the Leech. Uh,
Right.
you have you do have the innkeeper, who can kind of weirdly prove themselves if they find an acrobat and pick their neighbors, which I've seen happen. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Um, I mean, again, I think that's
I've seen it multiple times.
I think that it can happen. Hmm. Yeah, I guess. I guess that's a fair criticism. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I mean, you can kind of do the same with a sailor, but that's obviously not on the script.
Right.
Okay, I
And
don't
Sailor
know.
wouldn't fit on here at all, really.
I mean, it is worth saying on this script that there are like ways around that. Like if you don't know if that was actually the innkeeper or if they were a poisoner or even a widow, unless it's
Right.
the second night probably. Um,
Or a
but yeah,
drunk
that
goon.
could be a drunk goon. If you know that there is a goon next to you as well. Yeah, I think we've kind of covered everything there with the characters that are on the script. I don't know if there's anything that you think I've missed, Navian.
I think we haven't really talked about gossip.
Okay, go ahead. Do you have anything you want to talk about gossip? But you're right, we haven't.
So, I mean, gossip can have some of the sort of similar issues as I have with like the Lycan gambler jinx, which is that if the Lycan does manage to kill, gossip is not as strong, right? They don't have a way to know whether their ability worked or not, and there's not a lot of like strong active constant killing here other than that. So like there's no Shabaloth, for example. There is Poe, so there is a multi-kill demon on here. There is Pit Hag and Assassin and Godfather. So like it's probably fine. Mostly the bigger concern is again with the lycanthrope. But you know, shrug. I think it's a very kind of like middling interaction.
Habby?
Yeah, I see that. I think that the issue that I have, I think, with that ends up being that gossip ends up being storyteller fiat a lot of times, and I think that storytellers in general need to break out of that habit. Like storytellers sometimes need to just kill a player that's really good on either team, just because I think it can end up being too metaable otherwise. And I think that it's important to be able to have that optionality be there so that people know what it is that they can expect in terms of like a gossip kill doesn't necessarily signify anything, so to speak. I don't know. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm not explaining it properly, but like you need to become ungovernable, become unmetaable, as it were.
I guess. I think that another issue with it is if you don't have a lycanthrope in play, you have a gossip in a Leviathan game, there's very limited ways for evil to potentially bluff that. So it can really just hard out the gossip. But that can go back to what you were saying earlier about the fact that, like, sometimes you really need to curate what you're putting in play with what. And that does make the script a bit more limiting in terms of the ability to balance it because it means that there's certain combinations that you're almost never going to put in play together. And therefore, if the game starts off as a Leviathan game and everybody knows it, then anybody who's bluffing as like Gossip or Flower Girl are probably going to be a little bit more suspect. So it also narrows the bluffs that you can give to the evil team and that kind of thing, right? So
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Um, Nathan, I know that you said earlier that you had some things you wanted to talk about when it came to characters potentially to add to the script. Do you wanna kick things off in our sort of like review section by talking about them?
Yeah, I mean, so we talked a little bit earlier about like having maybe a more active minion finder. You've been back and forth on like Preacher to Town Crier, but I don't know, maybe play around with that a little bit more, I guess. Because again, the complaint about Preacher is like it's not particularly very fun. And if your complaint is, well, I don't like Preacher and Flower Girl both in play, then I think removing the Flower Girl would be a fine choice to do. I talked before about how I think that can potentially be particularly difficult for evil to deal with on Leviathan, but I think that any of sort of like those newer roles can be pretty decent. So High Priestess, Knight, Steward, Shugenja, I think all of those have pretty strong potential for working on the script. Um, and then I don't particularly like Acrobat here. I know that three of the like we just talked about Acrobat and how yes, there is a bunch of like potential ambiguity on its death, and that does make it more of an outsider. I do agree that Acrobat belongs on scripts that have things like night death ambiguity, but it's probably a just better served by Tinker in general. And I think limiting the outsiders to like their deaths. So, once again, going back to sort of like the Leviathan thing, where if too many people die in the night, the Leviathan is losing a lot of its strength of keeping a good number of people alive. So with Tinker, you as the storyteller always have a choice to do that. Well, I guess unless they're innkeeper protected, then you don't. But you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah.
Whereas with Acrobat, like if they're
Kill
going
them
to
in the day.
trigger, you can't prevent the Acrobat from triggering if they're going to, and there's nothing mechanically in the game allowing you to prevent it. So, what about maybe a Plague Doctor instead of the Acrobat?
Plague Doctor is definitely a character that was on the theoretical versions of this script once some characters were kind of understood to be in existence. Um, Plague Doctor was definitely on here because I think it it's very it's very devastating. My fear would be that having both a Plague Doctor and uh, a Plague Doctor and a Moonchild both on the script would dissuade executions for good.
Yeah, that's fair. I do still think that Acrobat could probably benefit from replace. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention about Flower Girl too, by the way, is there's no way for any of the demons to move. I guess there's Pit Hag technically. You can change who the demon is, but like there's no Barber, there's no Fangu, there's no Imp. Most of these demons can't, and most of the time won't be moving, except maybe if a Pit Hag creates a new
Right.
demon. So Flower Girl is quite strong in that sense as well. That there's little movement and there's very limited sources of misinformation from the Flower Girl. Whereas like part of the reason it can work in S&V is that a big portion of S&V is this a Vortox game or is it not? Because if it is, then this. If it's not, then that. And without that, without Vortox being on the script, it makes Flower Girl harder to play against.
Sure.
Sorry, I did forget to mention that earlier, and I did want to.
No, that's fine.
Um, are there outsiders that you do like then, and like that you think could work that aren't as harsh as Plague Doctor?
Um, I mean, I considered maybe doing Puzzle Master instead. I know that was a consideration at one point. I also liked the idea potentially. And again, I hate this character. I really do. But Snitch also could work on the script. I think that it's one of those things that actually does exactly what you want evil to not have, which is a better reason to exist. You know, that you don't want double claims, you want to know what's not in play. All of that stuff is stuff that can be uh, mitigated by having a snitch in play, despite the fact that I find it to be an incredibly unfun character. But other than that, I mean, no. I mean, again, our 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 selection of outsiders is very small, and
This is
I
true.
I don't really see anything that stands out as being like I would totally want to have that instead. I think the closest thing would be Plague Doctor though, because it is such a minion centric script.
What about a barber?
I considered a barber. Um, I think that if Barber's in play though, I know it's kind of like an escape hatch for evil if you do get a barber kill. I worry that there might be too much poise. Maybe it's fine. I don't know. I think that if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably lean more towards Plague Doctor than I would for Barber.
I think if you did put a barber in, I'd feel a little bit less strongly about Flower Girl. I still think might benefit from a change, even if you did, but at least it would give some more maneuverability for the evil team if they felt they needed it.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
What do you think then, Habby? What do you think you want to change? Because I know that you said that it's been a while since it got updated, and you've been thinking about it. Um, has anything that we've said helped you to be like, yeah, maybe we could change that out, or that's an interesting character that could work here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, that's part of the reason why. I mean, you guys are one of the better resources that the Clock Tower community has in being able to fine tune and being able to actually, I don't want to say like optimize, but help realize the vision that people have for their scripts because um, you've seen so many scripts at this point, and Script Notes has been such a good resource to be able to create uh, environments where players can have their script objectively looked at and kind of dissected in a way that's going to be constructive. So I think that I'm definitely less attached to a couple of the townsfolk. I think that the evil team is probably fine as it is. Again, I simply just don't see a replacement for really any character on here. The only one I would consider would be Poe, just because of the bad, the feels bads with Pit Hag potentially. But honestly, like I don't see another demon that because again, the Poe fulfills the power role. It is the big killer, and I would not want to put Shab in because it just I don't think it works very well. I mean, Poe could potentially be Oho, maybe, just because then there's storyteller fiat as to who dies, and that could be like a multi-killer, but that takes the agency away from the player, and I don't want to do that. So I don't necessarily see another demon that really fulfills the Poe's role the way that I envision it. So I think the evil team is fine. I think if I were to change any outsiders, I probably would get rid of either an acrobat and or tinker, potentially for plague doctor and barber. And then as far as the townsfolk are concerned, I think that's where the changes need to happen. I think that the townsfolk suite is either too oppressive to evil or it just simply has too many blanks. So I think that if I were to change anything, like bounty hunter might change, flower girl might change, lycanthrope may change, cannibal slash undertaker may change. I'm not quite sure which one. But I mean, like, I have some good bones of things that I can kind of work with. Oh, and Preacher would have to go. I think Preacher would just suck. But if I was to do anything, I would probably be looking at redoing a lot of the townsfolk so that to kind of work with the fact that we've gotten a lot of townsfolk abilities since then, and I think that that could be helpful.
I think for me, the one townsfolk um, that I don't think plays great with any of the demons is the mayor. Um, Obviously, we spoke about it with Poe. With Vigor Mortis, I don't think it's terrible, but if either of your neighbors died, and particularly considering there's a poisoner on the script, I just don't think I'd ever trust my ability. I don't think I'd ever be tempted to go for it. Whereas with Leviathan, I think you have the opposite problem in that the evil team have no way to deal with a mayor. I suppose they have an assassin, but that's kind of it. Um, and they kind of, yeah, they kind of struggle uh, to do anything about the mayor, who is, as with all players, more likely to be good than evil. So I find that while the mayor Leviathan Jinx is a necessary one, it favors the good team quite strongly. So I personally don't love the mayor with this demon combination, but I don't know if you have strong feelings there. I don't know what I changed it with. Obviously, there's been a few that we've spoken about. Another outsider could be your damsel to give the minions even more of a play. And then obviously you probably want to pair that with a huntsman. Obviously that
Not
has the jinx
necessarily.
then, not necessarily, but you might want to. That obviously then has the jinx with the widow that Nathan and I both love.
Where you just remove the tokens. Or sorry,
No, uh,
that's the other one.
that's
That's
That's magician,
magician.
yeah.
That's magician.
Yeah, it's the hate jinx where they can't be in play together,
I
but
I
it,
somehow failed the magician challenge while not playing a game at all.
Yeah,
excellent, very
the
well
the
done, very
magician
professional.
damsel jinx. If there is a magician and widow damsel jinx. If there is a damsel in play, the damsel token is removed when the widow sees the grim.
Yeah, that all makes sense, right? That there's no way
Yeah.
that can be fucked up.
No, it is of course a hate jinx that they can't be in play together. But the reason that I love it as compared to like other hate jinxes, which are usually just maybe don't put these on the script together, is because the damsel can't just like flat out say, hey, I definitely know that there's no widow in play, or if somebody claims to have heard a widow's call, they can't be like that person is lying because they will just lose the game. And so the level of tension and like bluffing that may end up happening in that is so much more interesting than most of the other hard jinxes, where it's just like, oh yeah, okay, so you're claiming to be this role, which means that role's not in play, so either you're lying and that role probably is, or you're not and it's not. Shrug, not that interesting.
Yeah. Um, if we were to get, I think if we were to get rid of Preacher, I think putting Town Crier in is probably not a bad shout. I think if that's the case, we get rid of Flower Girl, and honestly, not broken up about that at all. Um, I think that we can actually change Flower Girl to a completely different function. I think that maybe Town doesn't even need the function of a Flower Girl, and we can just go in a completely different direction, like say General, High Priestess, etc. Um, I could try to find a space on the script, or I could use that space on the script for something that is a little bit off kilter, like say, an alchemist, an amnesiac, something like that. I don't necessarily know that that would help good though. I think all that does is actually just help evil by creating a bunch of really weird worlds, you know. But
All
I
right.
do think that I do think that getting rid of I think that if we were to keep Bounty Hunter, we would have to change some things out. I also potentially like the idea. I mean, maybe Oracle. Perhaps if Oracle is too powerful, which I don't personally know if it is, I think it might be in a Leviathan game. Um, if the Oracle, well, I guess maybe it's fine. But if I was to get rid of Oracle, I could theoretically change that to Seamstress to fulfill a similar functionality. If I was to do a You Start Knowing role, maybe a steward. I think steward might be a little underpowered, to be honest, on this script, but maybe we don't even need Night Watchman at that point. So, needless to say, there's a lot of changes that can be made.
All right. Um, is there anything that either of you want to talk about in the script before we go into the wrap up? No. Cool. The final questions I like to ask about the script is we start with our guest, then we go to Navian, then me. Habby, you sat down to play Rochambeau version 8. You've put your hand into the bag and you pull out a token and it's blue. What do you want it to be and what are you going to do with it?
I would imagine that if I was going to pull a blue token, I would probably want to pick either Undertaker or Cannibal. I feel like they have the potential to have the most fun with the script. Um, I think that those are the ones that I would, or maybe Innkeeper. I know Innkeeper is kind of a stressful role for a lot of people, but I think I would probably have fun with an Innkeeper on this script.
Navian?
I okay. I don't think I've ever been a successful lycanthrope or night watchman before because both times I have been those, I was a leech host. So I'm gonna
That
say
was a
one of
great game.
those.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna. I expected you to go Goon, to be honest. Um,
I did too.
Oh well,
yeah,
that's true. Yeah, yeah, Goon is definitely the number one choice by like, okay. Once I have successfully played as a lycanthrope or a night watchman, the answer is wholeheartedly Goon.
sure.
Well, actually,
How about that?
I think for you, Navian, the answer should be, I don't care what blue token I pull, just as long as I'm
As
woken at
long as
night
the
one and
bounty hunter
informed
has
of
turned me
evil.
evil. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's either the Goon or anything the bounty hunter would turn evil.
I think I'm with Abby for this one. I'm probably going with the cannibal. Although another choice I think is the Gambler. I think there are certainly some interesting things the Gambler can do here, particularly considering the minion lineup. We don't really talk about that much, but I don't know. I think that dying obviously is always what the Gambler wants to do, but not dying is interesting for the Gambler here for a number of reasons.
Sure.
Okay, final question, Habby. It's the same question again, except this time the token that you pulled is red. What is it? What do you want to
I mean, come on.
do?
Of course, I want to be a pit hag. I
Okay.
mean, it's not even a question. I think that as much as I love Leviathan as a character, my track record of playing as a Leviathan not good. So I think I'll avoid that one. But yeah, I mean, come on, you a pit hag is it's the ultimate power. I mean, if there was any other red token I'd want, it would probably be Poisoner. But I mean, those are my number one and number two. I mean, those are like my two favorite characters in the game.
You don't want to pull the Widow and see if you can get poisoning your Leviathan to work this time?
Well, see, the thing is, I know my track record, and as long as there's a Leviathan involved, I'm going to lose, if regardless of whether I'm the Leviathan or not on the evil team. So, yeah, I know that if I were to try it, I'm sure it would just go absolutely horrendous, just like it did the last time.
Fair enough. Navian, who are you trying to poison?
I would be trying to poison. Who would I try to poison? I mean,
It's,
obviously a bounty hunter
it's fun because I
would be
never
good to
need to ask if there's a
poison.
poisoner on the script the first part of the question.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, to be fair, I would also be pretty equally happy to pull a widow here because you get, like, you only get to poison one person, but you also get to have the spy ability built in, kind of. And, like, I think spy is really interesting to play, or really widow as well, for the same reason. Because you have to play the social game right. You have to know everything about the Grim and who's what without revealing to anybody when you talk to them that you already have this information, which I think is a really like fantastic game to play with yourself. Basically is how much can I do, how much can I get away with, how much can I trick people into thinking that I know nothing about this game. So I would be happy to be either a poisoner or a widow pretty equally.
Navian wants to play with himself, got it. Um, I would be quite happy to take you two as my minions because I am the Vigor Mortis in this trio. And
I have an
I
astoundingly good record of all demons that I have played. I think my winningest record. I don't keep official records. I'm just going off of memory here, but like I don't remember ever pulling a Vigor Mortis token and losing. I think I've always won as the Vigor Mortis, so I'm not surprised by that
Uh,
answer. I think that I feel the
the
same way.
the only time that I've lost as a vigor mortis was the time when I didn't start as the vigor mortis. I snake charmed my way into it. So
I don't
I
remember ever
also have a
playing.
great record with vigor mortis.
I don't remember ever playing Vig, but it is my
Oh
favorite
no, wait.
demon.
There was one game where actually I was a vigor mortis, but most people thought I was a leech for a while, and that was because I outed as leech to my two minions. God damn it, Molly! Why couldn't you just have been the pixie and not the oracle?
It all comes back to Mollybach.
It does all come back to Molly back. That was the one game as a vigor that I started vigor and lost, and I almost won. I got shockingly close to winning,
I think
all things considered.
I just think the sneaky Vig has a lot of fun things they can do with any of these minions, but Poisoner and Pit Hag are particularly strong to keep in. Your Pit Hag can then either, having been Vig killed, can then lock in the Leviathan, and the good team have to find specifically me, or this game is ending on day 6.
I think that that's again that's part of the reason why when I said that like the demon suite is pretty much like irreplaceable. That's part of the reason why is because the minions do so much heavy lifting. Vig is just perfect. Like it literally just accentuates exactly what evil wants to do in this script. So yeah, I totally understand that answer.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you both very much for joining me for this discussion of your script, Habby. Um, where can people find you?
I mean, I'm sitting at my computer right now. I feel like it's a pretty common location for me. Oh, you mean online? Oh,
Wait, no,
silly me.
no. I mean, I want your address. I want your
Okay.
zip code. If you've got I want your SSN. No, yeah. Where can people find you?
I would like your
Uh,
credit card number and the 3 numbers on the back, please.
you are getting none of that information. I know how many plush geese you would buy with that information. So,
Well, it's
yeah.
probably less than 300, so it's fine, right?
Yeah, as someone who's used that card to spend on 300 plush geese, I understand. No, I actually really don't have a social media presence necessarily. I am simply always at our Discord, which is the Connecticut Blood on the Clock Tower Discord. It's the one I'm the most active on. I mean, I pop by other people's Discords as well. But you can catch us every week, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can catch me and usually Navian, or Navian and usually me, one of the two of us, over at twitch.tv/CT Blood on the Clock Tower, or on YouTube at just CTBOTC, where we do uploads every Monday. So we actually have a new game that got uploaded onto the YouTube today, which was a video of Navian and I, where Patters was storytelling, and I didn't trust Navian for most of the game, which I shouldn't.
I never do. We're always on opposite teams.
Right.
Navian, I usually ask you where people can find you. Is there anything you want to plug while we're here? Obviously, you mentioned some things earlier, but thank you very
Come find
much.
me in my tunnels. I will kill you in them.
Don't
Uh,
threaten me with a good time.
I'm always here on this Twitch channel every Tuesday, every Sunday at 8 o'clock my time, which is 9 o'clock in the UK, or what, 2 o'clock in the Eastern, or half an hour later on a Sunday. We'll be back on next Monday when we have a special script notes first in possibly a series. Maybe it'll be standalone. We're not sure yet. Um, from personal experience, the easiest way to find Navian is to ask a question on rules discussion on unofficial Discord. That's true. I can be found the same way on the Patreon. Um, but speaking of which, I think that you two actually have something else that you might want to mention.
Do
Uh,
we?
Do
we
you
do?
not on Thursday?
Oh, Wednesday.
This Thursday?
Wednesday is
Oh,
it Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yes, it was originally listed on the Patreon erroneously as Thursday, but it actually is Wednesday. No, so Navian and I are actually going to be joining the fabulous Daddy Ben for a episode of Q&A. So if anyone is interested in submitting questions for Navian or I on our collective clock tower experience, or I guess whatever. I guess it's like a Reddit AMA really ends up being. Um, we can be found with Daddy Ben on Wednesday, and you can submit questions through the Blood on the Clock Tower app Patreon page.
Um, you can also send them to me because it's kind of my job to moderate that. If you want to, um, or you can just send them a DM. They'll probably reply. But yes, that is everything everywhere that all of us can be found. So thank you all very much for joining us. We will be signing off there. Usually we planned this to be we planned script notes to be on weeks that Day One Whispers aren't streaming. That was the original plan, but this was the only time that we could make this one work. Habby, I assume that you still can't make tomorrow.
That is correct. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry about that, but
that's
yeah,
absolutely fine. I just hope that I can do your script justice by myself,
I'm sure
probably,
you'll be able to.
or possibly with
I've had a
Jojo.
blast being here.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're gonna be wrapping things up there. Thank you all very much for joining us. I hope to see you all tomorrow. I hope to see you all on Sunday, and I hope to see you all next Monday for the start of our How to Build with the New Character mini series. That'll be fun. Have a great well week, I guess. I'm not used to streaming on Mondays anymore, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great night. And if you're watching this
Good
on YouTube,
night.
whatever time
Also,
or day it is,
yeah, good day, whatever.
bye.
Bye.